A local law entitled, a local law repealing the wireless communication surcharge authorized by Article 6 of the County Law of the State of New York and imposed by the County of Otsego, Local Law 2 of 2004, and imposing the wireless communication surcharges pursuant to the authority of Tax Law Section 186G. Notice is further given that the Board of Representatives will conduct a public hearing on the proposed local law in the Representatives' Chambers at the County Office Building in the Village of Cooperstown, New York on Wednesday, August 2nd, 2017 at 9:45 a.m., at which time all persons interested will be heard. The location of the public hearing is accessible to persons with mobility impairment. Copies of the local law are available for viewing in the Clerk of the Board's office, County Office Building, Cooperstown, New York, during regular business hours. Dated July 27, 2017, Carol D. McGovern, Clerk of the Board of Representatives, Otsego County.
This time, is there anyone wishing to speak on local law C?
Yes, I'd like to speak. I know that this has been imposed on us, and the money was supposed to be spent how? Because we got some of the crummiest cell service that I've run into when I've been traveling. So definitely get rid of it. It doesn't seem to have benefited us. And if you know more, do what you think is best. Thank you for your listening.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak this time?
Notice of public hearing on the 8-year review of Agricultural District Number 3 and Agricultural District Number 8. Notice is hereby given that a public hearing will be held by the County Board of Representatives of Otsego County, State of New York, at the County Office Building in the Village of Cooperstown, New York, on Wednesday, August 2nd, 2017, at 9:55 a.m. upon the Agricultural District Number 3 within the towns of Springfield, Cherry Valley, Otsego, Middlefield, and the villages within the towns, consisting of approximately 64,423 acres in the Agricultural District, and the Agricultural District Number 8 within the towns of Morris, Butternuts, Unadilla, Otsego, the villages within the towns, and consisting of the approximately 35,453 acres in the Agricultural District, to consider modifications and report of status of agriculture in these said districts at the recommendation of the Otsego County Agricultural and Farmland Protection Board pursuant to Article 25AA of the Agriculture and Markets Law. The recommendations and report of status may be examined at the Otsego County Planning Department at the Meadows Building, 140 County Highway 33W, Cooperstown, New York, during regular business hours. Proposed modifications are as follows. Agricultural District Number 3, additions, 609.98 acres, removal, 1,588.89 acres. Agricultural District Number 8, additions, 472.52 acres, removal, 252.54 acres. All parties in interest and citizens will be heard by the Otsego County Board of Representatives at the public hearing. The location of the public hearing is accessible to persons with mobility impairment. Dated July 27, 2017, Carol D. McGovern, Clerk of the Board of Representatives, Otsego County, New York.
Is there anyone wishing to speak on the public hearing, Agricultural District Number 3? Okay. We'll leave it open. Roll call.
Frazier?
Here.
Powers? Clark?
Here.
Stammel?
Here.
Kennedy?
Here.
Overacker?
Here.
Bliss?
Here.
Marietta?
Here.
McCarty?
Here.
Wilbur?
Here.
Koenig?
Here.
Gelsman? Carson?
Here.
Skilligros?
All please rise for the pledge.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now open up for privilege of the floor. Please state your name and address and limit your comments to 3 minutes. Anyone wishing to speak? Yes, sir.
Yeah, John Phillips, Fly Creek, New York, State Highway 28. On Monday, I stopped down at our transfer station and was handed this notice by Renee about the landfill transfer station being closed for 6 weeks starting August 21st. Well, I'm kind of here wearing 3 hats. One is I own some rentals, 2, I'm a general contractor, and 3, I'm approaching elderliness. I'm in a gravitational pull of 70. So The first part is a renter. Everybody knows that Friday's our turnover day here. We have a 4-hour window of opportunity to clean the rentals, take them to the transfer station, and so forth and so on. I'm not going to belabor this point. We have limited time. Now, if it had waited 2 weeks till our season was over, that would have been great. But now we have to take these things all the way to Oneonta. I clocked it from my house to the transfer station in Oneonta, 62 miles round trip. By the time you're waiting on additional lines down here due to this being closed, it's going to be 2 hours out of a 4-hour work window we have. 2 more weeks would have been nice on that. Secondarily, as a contractor, I'm not a big contractor, so I don't have a big dump trailer and a way to store stuff. I do jobs. I take it to the transfer station and I dump it. Okay, so I might have to store a lot of stuff, but at least it's not household garbage smelling it. That's an inconvenience I might have to deal with. But it's still one I wish I had time to budget for. I have a small demolition job coming up that I did not plan on spending all that extra driving time and time at the landfill. I wish I could have incorporated that into my budget, so I'll have to eat that. Again, 3 weeks is not enough time to plan anything. This thing didn't just pop up, so I think that this group should have looked towards the possibilities of problems developing, particularly for my third hat, the elderly, what do we do with our garbage and all. Fortunately, I'm in good health, but there's a lot of people that aren't, and it's really going to be problematic. So my father said, don't just complain about something unless you have a solution to it. So I think I have a possible solution. I've been associated with the town of Otsego for 15 years on their local government, and I've started to talk to a couple of our council people that maybe we can have Casella or somebody put 3 units, 3 dumpsters on our Department of the Highway town barn. It's a huge area. It's a possibility. I've talked with Karen now. We have to see if we have a permit for that or something, but maybe we can get an emergency permit. But the inconvenience for everybody just to get rid of their recyclables or drive these things, for hours, the extra time that's going to be involved on the lines down there. If half the county's going to Oneonta, think of the backup down there. Sometimes I've waited online down there for an hour, just on a normal day. Again, I was told that, the contractor needs to start that day. Well, I'm a contractor, and if I'm building a bathroom for Mr. Marietta, and he tells me he's got family coming in, I want that job. I'm going to adjust my schedule to do it. I mean, they've paved interstate highways without closing them. So there could have been some accommodation here. Maybe, I understand the driveway, that's a shut down completely. But then accommodation should have been thought of, and this board should have come up with some solution. And I'm trying to help with that. I'm available to help if anybody wants me. Andrew has my number, David has my number. But after I leave here, I'm going to talk to Meg Cannon to see if there's anything we can do to expedite this on a town of Otsego level. But I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak? Karen?
I can just add, I had a conversation with John before he spoke, but we are talking with Town of Exeter, which is already a permitted collection point for our recyclables and our household waste. We are sympathetic to everyone's concerns. This has been a project that's been talked about for 3 years now. I didn't have an exact date from the contractor until last week. The minute I got it, I got the word out. And we are looking to possibly open up Exeter, placing our staff person there on the regular times that he is at Northern, with more containers and making that public. Until I have confirmation, I didn't want to release that information, but before the 21st, we will have a definite plan. I appreciate your offer with Otsego, but again, you can't just place dumpster and collect it without a permit in place. Exeter has a permit, so it's a good opportunity for us to utilize that. So we're hoping that these improvements make life easier and safer at Northern. It's been a concern of mine since I've become director 5 years ago, and we're finally at that point where we can move ahead. I am somewhat at the mercy of the contractor and his schedule. I postponed it from the beginning of this summer to now, and I wish I could postpone it more. You can appreciate that when the weather, but we will do our best. And I know I'm not going to please everybody, but I appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Karen.
Anybody else wishing to speak? Yes.
Hello, I'm Stacy Haynes, Executive Director of the Susquehanna Animal Shelter. As you know, I've been coming just about every month so far this year, and my goal has been to inform you as to why the Susquehanna Animal Shelter has been advocating to receive county funding, which we desperately need, and I know that it's important that we communicate to you why we need it. So I have just a couple examples today to add. Tomorrow I'm actually meeting with Mr. Oberacker and some town of Worcester officials to brainstorm a way to solve a stray cat problem. Worcester is reporting that they're so overrun by stray cats at this point that people can't eat outside at a Main Street restaurant because cats are jumping on people's tables. Clearly, that's not okay. It's a nuisance. And at this point, nobody's really sure what we can do to solve it, because clearly we have to be humane. But the animal shelter wants to help, and the town officials are desperate, so we will brainstorm and try to collaborate. The Susquehanna Animal Shelter believes that the stray cats and the nuisance cats are a countywide problem. In 2016, our animal shelter took care of a total of 225 cats. This year, we've taken in, at this point, 195 cats. We have a waiting list for around 70, and that doesn't include the cats that just randomly come in and get dropped off when we ask people not to do that. And you probably have seen in Facebook or in the newspapers, people drop them off in boxes or sometimes bags, kitten litters. So those numbers don't include those drop-offs. We also believe that this jump in cats is a result of the county only having one low-cost spay-neuter clinic that has 30 appointments a month. So Dr. Puritz has a clinic called GoFar, which once a month they have a low-cost spay-neuter clinic, and it's an excellent deal. But she can only do it once a month, and it's all run by volunteers. So because of that, there aren't low-cost spay-neuter clinics for people to take their own cats or stray cats or nuisance cats to help control the problem. That clinic that I'm talking about is booked until December. The animal shelter, we used to have a voucher program 2 years ago that we eliminated that provided vouchers for free low-cost or free spays and neuters, but it was costing us about $24,000 a year. And at that time, we're operating at a deficit, and it was literally money that we didn't have to be providing people to go get their cats spayed and neutered. So we had to eliminate it, and we feel like now these numbers that we're seeing and people reporting, they're being overrun by cats is a result, just one result of that program being eliminated. I hope that helps you see just another way that the animal shelter and the county could collaborate to either provide a low-cost spay-neuter clinic or, the sky is really limitless how we can collaborate. Just one more example. A couple weeks ago, we took in a dangerous dog from Roseboom. This week, we're taking in another potentially dangerous dog. With dangerous or vicious dogs that are suspected to be, we take great patience and responsibility in caring for these dogs. If dogs are truly deemed dangerous or vicious, we do humanely euthanize them, as it's the responsible thing to do. And here's where we play an important role. When folks have a dangerous dog or a vicious dog, there aren't a lot of options. In fact, I'm not sure what their options are, except for to take it to a vet and have it euthanized. And that's hundreds of dollars. We will take the dog for $40, and we will assess it and we will euthanize it, again, for $40. So if we aren't able to provide that service anymore, I'm not sure what people would do with their vicious or dangerous dogs and who would be at risk. We understand that your budget is very limited due to mandates and critical line items, but we ask that you please understand that we play a critical public service and we deserve a line item in your budget too. Thank you for your time.
Anyone else wishing to speak? Yes?
Russell Aarons. I live at 180 County Highway 26 in Cooperstown, just outside Cooperstown. And thank you for the opportunity to again speak to you. This has been a long process since Maria's had her home taken. Every year we have these auctions, and this year looks to be the biggest one of all. There's one property that's $300,000. Obviously, you're going to reap in a bunch of extra money that was way beyond the taxes and penalties that were due. I would advise that we do the right thing, and that is to use that money to help with the SPCA. I travel some, and in Edson, New Jersey, for instance, they sold a police car, auctioned it off, and the money went to help the animals. There's so many more things, good things that we can do in this county. Now, as we look ahead to this oncoming sale, you and the public, you need to be mindful that you will be bidding against county employees, people that may have inside knowledge, that may have influence with Dan Crowell. Now, there's other people that didn't have influence with Dan Crowell. In other words, he has sole discretion at this moment to take things out of the auction. He's taken out number 66 already, has disappeared. Other counties have many removed. Be with her a lot. In the future, and this is coming this year, it appears that 7 of these homes are occupied. If they're in your district, I don't know if you've contacted these people, if you know where they're going to go, what their situation might be. Now, myself as an adult protective worker, we get contacted from the electrical companies before a shut-off happens. They respectfully ask us if we can assist and make a personal contact at the home. I do this on a regular basis, and I make diligent efforts to find these people through the phone, through going there, and sometimes multiple times. This is the time of the year right now where we see a lot of shut-offs because it's not winter, so there's no mercy in this. What's coming ahead so far as utility price increases is going to be devastating to the people that are on fixed incomes. The people in this county are not well off. Maybe the people here in this room are, but others aren't. Now, this county needs to, quotes, clean up its act. Don't act like a bunch of swamp rats in running this show. You took our beautiful nursing home, you sold it. We know how that's gone. Now we got the problems with the dumps, and this is brand new to me because I was out of town for a week, but this is going to impact us. We'll have to find another place or, have garbage storing around, and that's just an opportunity for hygiene issues, and it's going to look bad. The people that do the Dream Park rentals, the garbage is lined up next to our home, multiple bags. Now, how are they going to handle this? I really don't know. The small operators like Smith Trucking here, Russ Smith Trucking, they're basically putting them out of business and now closing the landfills. And I don't know if it's closed or are we just reconstructing? It's temporary. See, so I didn't even have any aware of this. How long are we going to be down?
30, 40 days.
30 or 40 days. So, okay, that's good to know. And thank goodness we're not closing it. I do hope that they fix the road going in because it was rough. I mean, it's reverse speed bumps. Well, anyway, thank you for your time. Please nullify the contract. You did not wait for a court decision. With liberty and justice for all, Maria had a pending appeal, and you went ahead and just did it without you board members being even involved. And the person buying it immediately put it out for sale to flip it for a big profit. And in that process, made Hubble Realty look quite foolish in that they're selling this home with 1 acre that's not even legally subdivided. County employees need to be we as county employees need to be very vigilant that the public does not see this as a conflict of interest. Where else could you go where you would be paid to be at that auction? You're being paid, whether you're on vacation or personal time or whatever. That's something that the public doesn't have. And then the additional insider knowledge does not set up a level playing field for anyone. And thank you for listening today.
Anyone else wishing to speak?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Maria Jello, who had the home taken. Good morning. I'm at the Mercy Actually, he was very merciful, took me in when my home was taken by a vicious co-worker who evicted me with state police. Isn't that wonderful? And tried to steal my horse too. They used to hang horse thieves, but now I get abused by a horse thief. He's safe with me. Now, I have a couple of things to speak about, but first and foremost, Mr. Stalmo, I'd like to thank you for that letter you wrote in the Freeman's Journal. You are an honorable man. You're not here for self-aggrandizement. You are not here to make a profit. You are here as a statesman to try to encourage everyone to do the right thing for our most vulnerable to our most elite. It doesn't matter. Mr. Carson, you as a veteran, you have honored my late husband and all that you've done. And Mr. Marietta, I agree with you. Full board should be how everything is discussed. I agree with you, and I honor all of you. This board, this sitting board, is not the one that decided I did not need a resolution or a full board vote at the most extreme point in anyone's life, to have a home taken and be made homeless. Excuse me. Stop the clock. All right, I'm back on board. Bob Force had a resolution. That board withdrew it, and yet they acted on it anyway. Last month, you withdrew the resolution to support FASO. Now, I'm going to take it that withdrawn means not to be revisited and not to do anything about it. It's done, it's dead, it's put up on a shelf. Mr. Bob Force's resolution was withdrawn, and yet the board didn't have anything to do with his home being transferred anyway. I never got a resolution. I never had anything. I had a blitzkrieg the day after I came here, asking you again to please allow me to pay those back taxes and to nullify that contract so I could go back to my home. The day after, the state police were on my property, banging on my door to allow that county worker to come into my home. She wanted everything, and you took the profit. That damn crowd told me, Maria, you could buy back your own home. How could I? It's even in the little county book that you have on your auction. Oh, not you, but someone can buy it back for you. That's not true either. That would have been nullified, and he still has sole discretion. What is it, discrimination? Well, am I not young enough? Am I not powerful enough? Don't I have what it takes? I'm 64 years old, sir, I'm on the outer orbit with you, okay? You might be a little bit closer, but I'm 64, I'm catching up fast. So, nullify that contract, and let's set up an ethics board, impanel it, so that we can, as a county, be better, not worse, not better than anybody, but better than who we have been. Let us be ethical, let us be compassionate. We have homeless in this country. We have people that are hungry. And my beloved Pope said it's because we're indifferent. And that's the truth. We are indifferent. And last but not least, I'm with you, woman, on that I don't know how many times I've told you, put in the line. Come on. You sold the house for $66,000, $50,000. You know what they did at the pony auction when we were down in Virginia? They made $200,000 selling ponies for the fire department. But they had one pony that they select for a charity every year. One year it was Wounded Warriors Hospice. This year was Kiwanis. Here's an idea. Set up any house that you want, preferably one that's not occupied so those poor souls don't have to go through what I do, and earmark it for them. That pony made $10,000 for the Kiwanis. Now, what would $10,000 do for them? Think about it. We need to be human. We don't need to be robots and do, you know, that we don't care. Let us not be indifferent. Nullify that contract. Get me my ethics board. I need to go home, and my horse Teddy is tired of living on a half acre. God bless you, and thank you all.
Is there anybody else wishing to speak? Motion to approve the minutes for July 5th.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Presentation of petitions, communications, and notices.
I have the Alternatives to Incarceration Program Services rendered by Catholic Charities of Delaware and Otsego Counties June report. I have a notice of claim, James Home against Otsego County and the Otsego County Sheriff's Department. The nature of the claim is false arrest, malicious prosecution, unlawful imprisonment, negligence, and fraud. And there is no amount stated on that claim. I also have a notice of claim, Pamela McKinley individually and as the administrator stated in this claim, and this claim is for the wrongful death, pain, suffering, pre-impact terror, personal injuries, medical expenses, loss of earnings, and other damages sustained as a result of a motor vehicle accident resulting in the death of Edward McKinley.
Dan?
Yeah. We good to go?
Good to go. We have a presentation from Danny Lathan of Otsego County Conservation Association.
Where's the best place to stand that I'm not blocking the screen?
They'll let you know if you're in the way.
Can everybody see the screen okay? Can everybody hear me all right? All right. All right. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Danny Lappin. I am the environmental planner with the Otsego County Conservation Association. I would like to thank Chairwoman Clark and the Board of Representatives for giving me this opportunity to present to you all today. I'd also like to send a special shout out to Jordan Clements and Karen Sullivan for being here. They, along with me, really were the spearhead behind this important process. All right, so as you can see, there were over 13 agricultural and conservation entities tasked with updating the 1999 Otsego County Ag and Farmland Protection Plan. So here you see 8. I'm not going to get into everybody, but what I'm trying to get across here is that it was a real, true team effort comprised of a lot of hard work. And I want to let you all know that a lot of these guys did have full-time jobs, often working way over 40 hours a week, and dealing with daily phone calls from me demanding sections to be done. So here we have Department of Ag and Markets, the Farmland Protection Board, NRCS, Farm Bureau, and others. Again, this process could not have been done without a concentrated effort by all 13 entities. And the reason for this is we decided to do it in-house. That means not hire an expensive consultant to come in with their team and do it for us. Everyone kind of got together and did the plan. So it was a really tremendous effort by everybody involved. So basically, the Farmland Protection Plan set up a top-down, bottom-up committee structure. That's fancy planner speak for basically telling you all and the public that we're keeping our ear to the ground and trying to be as responsive as possible to the farmers and stakeholders tasked with growing our agricultural economy and protecting our farmland. So at the top, we have the Board of Representatives, which is you all. We have the New York State Department of Ag and Markets, which oversees the contents of the plan and the directions of the plan pursuant to Article 25 AAA of the New York State Ag and Markets Law. Okay, over time, you can feel free to jump in with questions, comments, or concerns as they arise. I like to have like a more ongoing discussion. Okay, and then you have the Ag and Farmland Protection Board, which meets yearly, but again, will be tasked with kind of making sure that things get done in their yearly meetings. Then you have the Core Committee, which is OCCA. We were added to the Core Committee, replacing the Otsego Land Trust in 2016. Then you have the Otsego County Planning Department under Karen. Then you have what's known as the Update Committee, and that's kind of every other ag agency, every other ag conservation agency. There are several, CADE, the Otsego County Real Property Tax Service, Farm Bureau, NRCS, and others. And then, of course, most important of all, you have the stakeholders.
So basically how this works is the plan oversight body provides policy directives. They say, okay, update committee and core committee, you guys need to look at how to grow and protect your agricultural economy and create ag jobs. And you also need to look at how you're best going to prioritize farmland for protection and actually go about protecting it. The core committee then says, oh my God, we have no idea what to do. We need data from the update committee. The update committee analyzes the current state of local, regional, and statewide, and even federal agricultural policy, and they then digest the data and then spit out information to the stakeholders through public meetings, through individual interviews, through various outreach sessions. The stakeholders then say, okay, this is great, but we want you to maybe take a look at protecting dairy a little bit better. Maybe we want to look at bringing more ag businesses to Oneonta, what have you. They provide feedback to the update committee. The update committee then takes a hard look at their ongoing programs. They audit state and local policies, and they say, okay, well, perhaps we need to provide some guidance to the update committee tasked with preparing the document. The update committee then takes all of that analysis and all that feedback and then provides an actionable product to the oversight committee. It has to comply with Article 25 AAA of Ag and Markets Law, so Ag and Markets can officially approve it, and then when they approve it, we can bring it in front of you all for adoption and potentially for implementation as well. So this process began in 2014, okay? And through the efforts of Scott Fickbaum, former district manager of the Otsego County Soil and Water Conservation District. He was tasked with forming the initial Otsego County Ag and Farmland Protection Plan Update Committee. A funny acronym is AFPUC, that I'm not, but it's just a mouthful, okay? So they were then tasked with scoping the document, meaning that they wanted to figure out what exactly is going on in our ag economy, where are our weaknesses, where are our strengths, where are potential opportunities for collaboration, and what are our most pressing threats. They then submitted a stakeholder survey to almost 1,300 recipients. We received about 330 responses, give or take, for a response rate of around 24%. Okay? Then they began doing the public outreach process. They set up 4 stakeholder meetings throughout the county through Jordan and Karen and Rebecca Morgan's work of CADE. They put the notices on the paper, they were in the radio, they were in Country Folks magazine. And then in 2015, they began doing the public meetings. They began digesting and analyzing the survey results, meaning they wanted to figure out what percentage of people thought property taxes was a major issue. How many people thought that potentially adding more value-added operations was a good idea. They wanted to get that kind of information in there because that helps inform the development of policies that actually serve the farmer. They then did a first round of stakeholder interviews. The first round was conducted by Carolina Ficano of Hartwick College in partnership with Rebecca Morgan of CADE. They reached out to almost 20 people and then kind of got their take on what the state of our agricultural economy was in Otsego County. And then the Ag and Farmland Protection Plan Update Committee then did additional public outreach at various events, trying to introduce this plan to the public. In 2016, OCCA took over, and one of the most difficult things that I had to do as a policy nerd is say, I have no idea what I'm doing. So when we took over in January of 2016, I really spent a lot of time trying to figure out what our agricultural economy looked like today, what has gone on from the last time we updated the plan in 1999, and who can best make sure that we protect our farmers and protect our ag economy. We then did a second round of stakeholder interviews, this time reaching about 10 people. Jordan delivered almost half, and then our other intern with OCCA, who's now left, did the other half. We got excellent feedback, and we made sure to direct the feedback onto what the county can actually do for the farmers. When you ask a farmer what they're concerned about, a dairy farmer will say, well, the price of milk is too low. The county itself can't really do that as the price of milk is controlled by the federal government. We tried to make sure that we directed the interview to focus on the scope of what we can actually do that's realistically achievable. Then we did a ton of background research. We looked at basically multiple segments of our ag economy, dairy, beef, bees, maple, etc. We looked at the effects that climate change could have on agriculture. We audited the land use regulations of 5 municipalities to make sure that they're not overly restrictive and cumbersome on our various farm stakeholders. And then at the request of Cornell Cooperative Extension, we then did a deep dive into I think 5 ag sectors. We sat down with a group of producer groups that Cornell had, and then with Meg Kennedy's, through her farmers market folks, and kind of try to figure out, okay, dairy folks, what are your strengths right now? Where are you hurting the most? Where do you see yourself in 5 to 10 years? And we made sure that we did this because oftentimes looking at the ag census and talking to a couple people does not provide a complete and accurate picture of where we are in our ag economy today. In 2017, we basically went gangbusters. Karen probably got 3 calls from me per day, begging for various sections to be completed. I was on the phone to everybody. But we managed to complete the analysis and present it in a 90-page document, not including appendices. It was a tremendous Herculean effort by everybody involved, and I couldn't be more happy to work with our county's ag stakeholders. The draft plan was then completed on July 1st, and where we are right now is highlighted in red. We just finished our public comment period, although I may extend it just because I want to hear from all of you who have not yet commented, but may yet want the opportunity to sit down with me and provide comments in writing. Hopefully by the September of 2017, the plan would ideally be adopted. In 2017 and 18, the implementation committee will be developed. This is important because just because you write a plan doesn't mean you've protected agriculture. You need to implement the policies, you need to get programs off the ground, you need to put in grant requests and identify the best people for the job of protecting our ag economy and conserving farmland. Then in 2018, the implementation process begins, and we hope that you all will use this document to ensure that we are accountable for the document that we created. Please make sure that this gets done. So some of you may ask, well, what's the vision of this whole plan? And if you will permit me, I'd like to read it. The vision of Otsego County agriculture is to maintain, grow, and initiate new agricultural concepts, practices, and opportunities that are realistically achievable, and to strengthen existing and new farm operations in order to preserve and nurture the viable farming sector of the county today and into the future. We included the realistically achievable part because one of the main issues in the 1999 plan was that a lot of the policy recommendations were too idealistic and too broad to be realistically implemented effectively and at minimal cost to our taxpayers. Okay? So some of you may ask at this point, well, why should we have an ag and farmland protection plan? Isn't ag going to be around in the future, today and tomorrow, regardless of what we do? Well, that's debatable. So the first reason I like to highlight, out of many, is the decline in dairy. So for those of you who don't know, dairy sales accounted for over 50%, approximately 54% of our gross agricultural sales in the year 2012. However, over the past 3 decades or so, the ag economy, especially locally, has been struggling. There was a decline from 246 dairy operations in Otsego County in 2002 to 149 in 2012. The current ag census is due to be released in a few years. It will be interesting to see where that goes. And according to FarmGate data, there is a 30% decline adjusted for inflation of the value of our our dairy sales with respect to fluid milk. So imagine a 30% decline over 10 years is pretty startling. According to a study prepared by Bill Gibson of the Cornell Cooperative Extension, he estimates since 1978 that there was an average annual loss of over $63 million per year without any economic multiplier effect factored in due to the decline in our dairy sector. And it's also important to note that the current cycle of fluctuation in the dairy markets, a couple years of decline then rebound, has been kind of broken due to global competition and a wide number of factors. It's explained in really great detail in a Farm Credit East report called the Dairy Reset. Go ahead.
Help me out here. That sounds like an unreasonable number. 63 million a year decline. That's like what, 25–30 billion dollars since.
Yeah. So basically.
Isn't that 63 million since 1978?
No. They kind of that was an estimate done, so it's not only in like the farms going out of business, it's also in lost sales revenue too. So if you look at like multiple facets of loss and total them up together, that's kind of what it is. It's just a large number. Bill Gibson has a report which kind of explains that, and then I'm sure he'd be happy to provide that to you guys. Okay, so the next reason I'd like to highlight is the ag economy locally is changing. You have a lot of small sectors popping up and growing rapidly. Between 2002 and 2012, your local grain sector grew almost 500%. You have hog sales growing almost 230%. Again, these are like small sectors, but they're growing rapidly. And it's important that we're responsive to this growth. And then it's also important to remember that 77% of our county's farms make under $50,000 per year. A majority of our farms have very thin margins, are small, but when you see the large agricultural growth in our county, it's driven by a small group of very large operations. So it's important to keep that in mind. Okay?
Is that net or gross, 50,000?
That's net. So when it comes to preserving farmland, the average age of principal operators in our county is 58 years old. And some of you may ask, well, why does this matter for preserving farmland? There was a 2013, I believe, American Farmland Trust study which stated that 92% of farmers across New York State do not have an identified successor or a succession plan. This leads us to believe as policy wonks that a lot of agricultural land is going to change hand over the next maybe 15, 20 years or so. And that gives us a lot of cause for concern because we want to make sure that our conservation programs are up for the task. And then on top of that, we have a 12.3 decline in the amount of farmable land in Otsego County. Otsego, and this is a relatively small number, but in Otsego County, it's important to remember that our county is defined geographically by hills and valleys. That creates a natural constraint on the amount of arable farmland right next to each other that can be put into production, as opposed to Western New York or the Central Valley of California, where you have like 1,000-acre tracts that are easily accessible and have road frontage. Okay? So I wanted to, we have many pages, 20 or so pages dedicated to key agricultural statistics, but I only wanted to touch on some of the highlights so I don't keep you here forever and bore you to death. So the $12.4 million figure refers to the amount of agricultural earnings of our ag sector in the year 2015. Agricultural earnings can be thought of net income, not as gross revenue or something. So it's after we paid all the taxes, put all the money into business costs. That's what was put out with respect to our ag sector. It's small. It's about 1% of the county's total earnings, which is around overwhelming and worth noting in this report. About the county itself employs, their labor force is comprised of about 2.6%. That number refers to the amount of people working in Otsego County's labor force in the ag sector per North American Industry Classification Statistics. May not be fully indicative of the full number of people working in the ag sector because they're not often on the books or reported as employees, but it's a best guess based on publicly available data. Okay? So the 1.43 figure refers to an economic multiplier effect generated by agriculture. How many of you know what a multiplier effect is? Raise your hand. Okay, good. That basically means for every dollar spent on agriculture in our county, an additional $1.43 of revenue is generated and distributed throughout the Otsego County ag economy. But at the same time, while ag comprises a prominent part of our local economy, it's also under duress. Over the last 10 years, you have nearly a 30% increase in the average expenditure spent on farm. So that means feed costs, chemical costs, fertilizer, compliance with environmental regulations, if you're not fortunate enough to have someone like Jordan coming to your farm to help you. Okay? And at the same time, the average income per farm worker, not per principal operator, has declined 22.5%. That shows that it's becoming increasingly difficult, if you work on a farm, to make money to feed your family, you often need maybe a second job or a third job. Just to give you a hint of the numbers, in Otsego County, the average income per farm worker, not for principal operators, but per farm worker, is $8,320. That's about $3,700 or so less than their statewide counterparts on average. Okay? So the next component, of our farmland protection plan, after we analyzed the ag economy and kind of got to take a sense of where we are today, was to do a land evaluation site assessment. I bet none of you really know what that is, so I got you stuck here. Basically, it's a way of taking 10 by 10 meter blocks or so of land and evaluating their suitability for agricultural production, okay? The NRCS created this model in the 1970s to basically get a sense of what tracts of soil are in most need of protection. This is particularly important in Otsego County because we are known for having particularly fertile soil in many parts of our county. So, in 2017, OCCA, in partnership with SUNY Oneonta, basically decided to create a GIS model, a mapping model that basically tells us which parcels of farmland are most in need of protection. And you're like, why do this? It sounds complicated. It's actually mandated by Article 25 AAA of Ag and Markets Law. Ag and Markets specifically instructed our committee that they will not adopt this plan unless we address which parcels of farmland are in most need of protection. So we took a number of land evaluation characteristics. This means the quality of the land. So you look at soil quality, you look at their farmland classification, and the NRCS so kindly also rates soil for their potential crop productivity. So we put that into the model. We then looked at site assessments. So what does the land look like within the 10 by 10 meter block, and what does it look like around it? We looked at distance from agricultural parcels to one another, distance to compatible uses, non-compatible uses, distance to hamlet boundaries, water districts, light districts, what have you. We wanted to make sure that we could figure out which areas had the highest development pressure and the most viable farmland in our county, and then present it in a digestible map for Karen and those who are interested to use. So that's kind of what the output was. So you may ask, well, what does this output look like? Again, as we've discussed, it rates a 10 by 10 meter block. It's a very high resolution kind of style of data, and it rates it on a score of 0 to 100. If it's 0, it means that either this parcel is not viable for agricultural production, again, based on soil characteristics and site characteristics. But if it's rated 100, it means it has great soil characteristics, great site characteristics, and it needs to be protected, okay? So we basically divided it into 3 color categories. We initially had 7, but it was really confusing when you're communicating this like complex information to the public, and you're like, what does color 5 mean? Why is it better than color 6? No one had any idea, really what the data meant, aside from me because I made helped make the model. But anyway, so those 3 characteristics, again, gray represents low suitability parcels or blocks. Yellow represents medium suitability. It means that there could be good soil, but maybe there's a little bit of development pressure that could threaten the viability of that ag parcel. And blue represents blocks of contiguous farmland with great soil, low development pressure, and is relatively flat and can be farmable. Okay? And through this process, we identified 6 priority conservation areas. All right? The first one is along the Route 20 corridor going from Springfield, Cherry Valley, Richfield, okay? The next one was the Highway 80 corridor, Exeter, the town of Otsego going down into Cooperstown. That was another area. The third area is the Richfield Springs Plainfield area in the northwestern corner of Otsego County. The 5th one is the Highway 51 corridor down New Lisbon Way. And the last one is the Butternut Valley area around Morris, Lawrence, and that area. Basically, the way we did it is we looked at the biggest areas of blue and took your proverbial red pen on the computer and drew circles around it. And usually with this type of analysis, you have an expensive GIS consultant come in, give you the map, give you the output, charge you $10,000 and then walk away. That's not what we wanted to do. We made this model open source. We have it housed on Dropbox, and we can feel free, we're willing to give it to anybody who wants to use it. We have our interns willing to provide, and I are willing to provide trainings on how to understand it, how to tweak it, and there's ways to get around the expensive ESRI licenses. I'll tell you that afterwards. I'm not entirely sure it's legal, but there are ways to get around it if you can't access, GIS software. If you're a municipal official, one component of an ESRI license, not the whole thing, can cost you $2,500. When I heard that, my heart stopped and I got upset. So, all right. So moving on. So you asked, well, what does output look like? Here it is, if you can see it. The areas in bright red are like the priority conservation areas. The areas in black are the municipal boundaries, and then you see the blues, yellows, and grays representing suitability of various parcels for conservation, okay? So again, that was pretty cool. We have it, we're willing to share it with anybody who wants it, and you can feel free to share it with other counties as well. They just have to kind of take their own data and put it in there, okay? So, throughout, now is the fun part. The Ag and Farmland Protection Plan Update Committee wanted to make sure that we all agreed on the direction that we wanted this document to take. We didn't want to disagree or squabble amongst ourselves, so we only put information or policy recommendations in the plan that was developed on consensus and that the county could actually do. Because when I initially took my first stab at the policy recommendations, Karen was like, we can't do this, we can't do that, county doesn't do this, county doesn't do that, so I had to walk it back, and then we identified 6 important policy recommendations, which I'd like to talk with you guys a little bit about today. All right? So, the first one has to do with building the organizational capacity to implement the Ag and Farmland Protection Plan. This means we have to take a hard look at all 13 of the entities tasked with implementing the plan and ask them, can you guys actually implement this document? And if so, and if you need to make changes to your program, what changes do you need to make to your program areas in order to have the time to do this? And there are several sub-recommendations under this. The first one that I'd like to highlight, since it's come up for discussion in front of the board before, is the identification of an agricultural implementation specialist. Think of this position as a field general, if you will. Somebody that can oversee the plan implementation process, organize all 13 entities tasked with implementing the plan, and bring in the agricultural economic development dollars that can actually improve our ag economy while minimizing expenses to taxpayers. OCCA and the County Planning Department prepared a report going over 3 different approaches to creating this position, and that's we provided that to Kathy, and I'd be happy to share it with you all, by request. Okay. So the next recommendation that I'd like to get into has to deal with supporting existing and developing new ag economic development programs. Now, the interesting thing about the ag economy is that it's always changing, but with the advent of new technology and new ideas comes additional opportunities to develop our ag economy. For example, there's several programs in Oregon and South Carolina that have people hire, apprentices. Basically, you have an older farm operator looking to have a successor to the farm. They bring in a new farmer, teach them, how to run their operation, let them buy like 1 or 3 acres, cultivate that, and then train them to eventually come to the point where they can succeed the older farm operator on, let's say, their 50-acre farm. That model proven to be successful. Obviously, we need to seek funding to get this off the ground. An example of an existing program is to continue our Ag Microenterprise Grant Program that has been incredibly successful in helping farmers secure the infrastructure they need to make sure their operations remain viable. The third one, again, is to help Otsego County farmers better market their products. When you look at when I looked at the Ag and Farmland Protection Plans of like 20 or so counties, I kind of saw that they were thinking about developing an identity of their ag sector. And I started to think, well, what is our county's identity of our ag sector? Does our ag sector have a brand? Do we have a marketing strategy? And the answer was kind of. Okay, so we thought that it would be a good idea to maybe potentially engage destination marketing to come up with a marketing campaign to not only recruit farmers to come here, but to tell our counterparts throughout the state why Otsego County's ag sector is important and why they should come and buy products from our farmers. That's incredibly important, okay? So recommendation number 4 is to basically enhance the quality and availability of ag data in Otsego County. This may not seem like, high priority, but it really is. When it comes time to update these documents, you want your ag sector data to be really in one place so that you're not going from place to place, you're not dealing with inconsistencies in information and maybe potentially uncooperative people in providing you that information. You want everything to be organized and in one spot, like on the web, that's easily accessible and digestible and usable by researchers, policymakers, the county, what have you. And one example of this is the county continuing to provide high quality GIS data to students at SUNY Oneonta or to us so that we can update our land evaluation site assessment model at no cost to the county, which would be awesome, okay? The next thing is to provide educational programs to multiple audience and enhance technical assistance to farmers. And one of the most interesting things is Cornell Cooperative Extension offers producer groups. They get people, like-minded people working in the same kind of producer sectors together so that they can share ideas, potentially jointly apply for funding, determine solutions to ongoing problems on their operation. And to kind of contextualize this, Bill Gibson has what's known as a beef calf feeder pool where he coordinates the gestation cycle of cows to make sure that they give birth and that the calves grow up at the same speed so they can have more cows go to market at the same time and thus access larger pools of potential revenue. So that's an example of an ongoing program. A new one would be to look for funding and additional partnerships to start an Ag in the Classroom program again. The state government is really behind STEM education, and what better way to teach science than to get kids on the farm dealing with animals and dealing with crops. I think that's great. And the next one has to do with developing critical farm infrastructure and protecting farmland. Caprero will go out to the farms, help them with conservation programs. They don't have the staff to kind of accelerate their programs the way that our dairy farmers need, for example, but they're trying their absolute best. And if farmers can't protect the environment, that creates fines. Fines help them fall behind and further push them into the red, and that's somewhere where we don't want to be. Another interesting idea that we thought of is helping municipalities change their regulations to take the burden off farmers. A lot of farmers don't have the ability or the time to understand complex zoning laws, complex subdivision regulations, go through the seeker review process. There's lawsuits pending on kind of manure storage and nutrient management programs that could put the additional regulatory burdens on farmers. It's important that you pump the brakes and make sure that regulations reasonably protect land use and public health, safety, and general welfare, but don't overly encumber farmers. If you audit, and for example, if you audit regulations of a town, Ag and Markets has a grant opportunity of $50,000 per town to help offset the cost of changing their regulations so that they can pay a consultant or do it themselves and not create additional burdens to their taxpayers. After our policy recommendations, there are a lot of them. There's recommendations and sub-recommendations. We identified 4 priority projects. The first one involves, again, developing the organizational capacity to implement the plan. The plan itself cannot be implemented if the organizations tasked with implementing the plan can't actually do this, okay? The next one involves bolstering technical assistance programs. This involves the creation of a one-stop shop for agricultural data. It involves the creation of a farm business directory showing contact information of the various entities you would need to know of and have access to as a farmer. There isn't one of those available today. We'd like to create one. Another one is going through the CFA process to increase Otsego County's farmers' participation in SUNY Cobbleskill's various ag economic development programs. They recently started the Institute for Rural Vitality, and in partnership with CADE started a farm and food business incubator program. It would be great if we could get our farmers on the ground floor with that. Okay? The next one has to do with identifying and prioritizing farmland for protection. Again, it's publicizing the importance of on-farm conservation programs. It involves conducting studies that allow us to understand, as legislators and policymakers, what our ag sector looks like day to day and what we need to do to protect our farm base. There's people, willing partners, myself, the land trust, and others that would love to take the charge on something like this. And number 4 basically involves increasing the marketability of Otsego County's agricultural goods and services. This means connecting businesses in Oneonta to potential partners in the agricultural community in neighboring towns. It involves trying to connect producers to sellers and producers to buyers like in New York City. So think of this. Imagine, through the food, downtown revitalization initiative, if the food hub, for example, had a distribution point where trucks could aggregate farm products in Otsego County, produced by Otsego County farmers, and deliver them down to New York City. The Lucky Dog Food Hub in Hamden, New York, has a very effective, cost-effective, implementable, achievable model that they're constantly trying to share. It would be great if we could leverage funds to get something like that over here. All right, and that's all I have for you. Sorry for going a little bit over time, but welcome. Open up the floor to any questions, comments, concerns. If you have detailed comments, I'd be more than happy to have you submit them in writing so that I can respond in kind, or come meet with me. I have plenty of time.
Yeah, Jim? Well, go ahead. Let's start with Len. Go.
I just wanted to say thank you for your presentation on behalf of your employer. I think it's great. I think the taxpayers are benefiting from this relationship between OCCA and our soil and water and planning department. So I just wanted to thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Jim?
I just want to clarify one more thing. That, I mean, you keep, and everybody does this, they keep saying dairy is diminishing in Otsego County. There are some huge dairy operations being built right now. So I hope everybody understands that
it's fluctuating. It's changing.
What's that?
It's just changing.
It's changing, but dairy is by far,
No, absolutely. There's less mom and pop 40 cow operations, and we're getting more what's called CAFO farms that are 300 animals or above adult animals that are milking. So
I'll try 3,000 animals. I mean,
well, yes. Yeah.
It's like, that's important to remember too. But you have a lot of the smaller dairy operations going down. That kind of drives the decline. So like in the ag census, you have it's a voluntary response. And so what you'll see is when the majority of the respondents indicate that they're hurting or their profits have diminished, the data will reflect that. But
they have, because the smaller farms don't have the financial backing that these 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 cow farms have, and they have millions and millions and millions invested, and they can withstand a year or 2 or 3 of bad years. Where if you're mom and pop, and after 3 years you say, okay, that's about enough of that.
Yeah,
but these guys are invested for the long haul, and they will. They're going to be a force to be reckoned with in Otsego County. They are the big
absolutely requiring to get on the ground.
I think that this report is invaluable. Obviously, I mean the information that goes into it and everything. But I just wondered right now, going back to the very beginning, all those intersecting organizations that gave input into developing the plan, and I know you right now. This plan, those organizations, this plan, there's not really a central connecting point. I mean, if anything that comes out of this, do you think, like the one-stop shop, I mean, can we get some more virtual presence? I mean, getting all these organizations, I don't know who takes charge of that. That's part of this discussion, I assume, in the plan, but even just making people aware of all the organizations that feed into this important effort and the services they're offering outside of even this what you've all put together. I mean, can that at least be an outcome as well?
Oh yeah, absolutely. You have basically at the top you have the implementation committee, and that's basically all the entities that updated the plan. You have then, in an ideal world, you have destination marketing working on educating the public about who protects our ag economy and who conserves our farmland. That's like the next tier, through online presence at events, what have you. The third tier is the creation of the farm business director, a farm resource directory, right. A farm business directory that can be provided, in a hard copy form. Because not a lot of people have internet access or are willing to go online to look up who does what with respect to agriculture. They like to have an easily accessible document that they can have. And then the bottom tier is through word of mouth. We want that kind of sustained cycle of ag economic development, farmland conservation, marketing, provision of resources and documents to kind of, little by little get it in the back of people's heads that there are actually a lot of entities protecting our ag economy. and conserving farmland, and that the county has focused its attention on making sure that this happens. So,
First of all, what Glenn said.
thanks.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And I've been thinking for years now that this county board organizational structure is kind of fractured in terms of agriculture.
Yes.
You've got OCCA and Jordan working with SWEC. You've got Cornell working with Health and Ed, and we don't seem to have any organized way of approaching our biggest industry in the county. Do you have any recommendations? And this is something you have to answer now, because this is something that obviously will take some thinking as we go along. We have this plan now. We've got something to guide us. We've got goals. We've got understanding what the threats are. We've got it all out in front of us. And so I'm going to ask you and your organization, as time goes on, to think about how the county can be more responsive and focused in terms of that. I know we said no crisis is things we can't do, but there are things we can do.
Oh, absolutely. I can give you a short answer right now. You want
Short answer.
Short answer. All right, I got you. All right. Short answer is we need to identify that ag implementation specialist and make sure that they kind of coordinate all of those various moving parts and can report directly to you guys, and you can ask them questions. You know, Dutchess County, for example, has a 3-tiered reporting structure. They have their ag implementation specialist, which was housed at their cooperative extension. They then reported to the update committee, which would be us. And then liaison from our committee would go to every county board meeting and give a report as to what's being done to implement the various recommendations of the plan. At the end of every fiscal year, they would provide what's known as a State of Agriculture report, meaning what grant opportunities did they go for? What does our ag sector look like today? What do the data show are our biggest needs? Are the policy recommendations even working? And if they're not working, what can we do differently? That kind of 3-tiered structure works well. There's also potential to share services with an ag implementation specialist in a neighboring county, like in Schoharie County, for example. They have one person tasked with implementing their plan, but potentially we could partner with them and have them help us with ours, and then they could then report to our committee, and then we'd go to you guys. So that's kind of what I'm thinking. And we'd be happy to discuss further.
I just had a process question moving forward, and I don't know, you know, is the next step for this plan, does it go to SWEC for approval and move forward to admin? I'm just wondering how, because I assume, and I questioned you, Danny, the plan, it's not like a binding plan. It gives us directions and suggestions, but it's not like we're held to have to achieve these things. So I'm just wondering on the process moving forward.
Oh, yeah. So the plan, we have a grant for this plan from the state and the Scriven Foundation as well. But the state requires us to officially adopt it through resolution. Okay, again, it's like a comprehensive plan. There are recommendations, and we are supposed to move forward with implementing those recommendations. And as Danny said, we may find that some of them are not achievable, and then we can move back and make recommendations for change. But yes, it has to be officially adopted. So our process today is to introduce it. We've sent you copies. Bring it to SWEC on the 17th. Hopefully have them do adoption of it with a resolution, bring it to the full board in September. I don't believe it have to go to administration because it's not a contract. It's not over $20,000, but that would be the hope. That's our goal anyways.
Like I said, I'd be happy to come to any of you or meet with any of you if you have, you know, input, criticisms, what have you. Anytime, just you shoot me an email, I'll be there. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Danny.
Good morning, and thank you, Madam Chair. Again, my reporting will be kind of a shortened version, and I see all the smiles on the face when I said that. Under highway, some things of note, we are starting to look at doing some of the paving of the roads in-house. It's the first time in a long time we've done this. Potential savings are being calculated and looked at. But mainly, we're looking at the potential to be able to bid, if you will, or see where the numbers are coming in when we have this done outside the county. Knowing full well that we can't or haven't been able to do it in the past, we feel as though this will tighten up some of the numbers coming in and give us the idea of whether we bid it out or we do it in-house. I'd like to say we're doing an exceptional job considering the weather. I know everyone comes back and says their roads are the worst, but I can tell you there are some that are worse than others, and I'm going to give Eric a chance to kind of give us a, that's the lead-in for Eric, by the way, for this Cornell road program with some updates. So if you want to just kind of give up and tell everybody where we're at.
Sure. I'll give you the quick and dirty version. Jacqueline, Corder, and Parker Fish, there are 2 contractors. They've covered 900 miles of road this summer. They know the roads better than anyone in the county, I can promise you that. They've been grading them through this Cornell Local Roads program. We're calling it the Otsego County Highway Asset Management Program. This is the first phase. This is our pavement management system. It has the potential to save us multiple millions of dollars moving forward. The concept is keeping good roads good. And while you're doing that, you repair your bad roads, which we have plenty of. We're taking, this is an objective approach to scoring roads. It's all about surface conditions, and the Cornell program looks at everything in the input. We judge it on about 8 different surface categories, and it comes up with the type of repair and the costs associated. We're going to break that down into square yards, so we'll have a very good idea moving forward of what this project's going to cost the county. We're at that phase right now. We're going to give a formal presentation in September, but we'll have those numbers. But right now, just some quick stats. A perfect road score is 94. We like to keep them at about 70 and above. That's the concept of the program. About 90 to 95% of our roads are below that. Just they've been neglected for some time, just types of treatments that can take place. And probably 60% of those are in the 40 to 50 range, which is going to require a substantial amount of work. Our biggest issue is water. We have poor drainage. About 75% of the work we're seeing returned there, and that's just the initial thing. You have to dry them out before you can do anything else. So we'll have stats. We can look at it, roads. Then we'll have a formal presentation, and we'll have an idea of a 5-year capital improvement plan and also strategic plan moving forward with this, and that'll be coming in September. So any other questions, I can answer them, but that's the condensed version of that.
Thank you, and thank you guys for taking the time to get us that very valuable data. One of the changes that we're also looking at under highway would be to more or less realign, or I'll use the word reestablish, how we handle our forestry and our forest in general. We're looking at reorganizing. We're going to look at potentially bringing that up under soil and water. It's been under highway. I was a little bit surprised when I found out that we as the highway department were in charge of, I guess, the forests and the forestry. It needs some updating. It needs some refocusing, and I think we're on the right track with that. Again, a very valuable asset that the county owns, one that I think we're looking at improving as we move forward. Buildings and grounds, we have some jail renovations, again, that will be coming up. The sprinklers, as we have talked about, are a couple weeks, hopefully, away from being completed and established. We're still waiting on a final approval from Onondaga for the bids that we have gotten to give us the status of our sprinklers. And basically, we're looking at flushing them and getting an update as to their condition and moving forward what we'll do with those in the future. I had the pleasure of presenting our MCEP plan up in Albany with our chair and Karen Sullivan. And this was for also the 4 towns in District 6 that I am fortunate enough to represent. And I wanted to say, number one, thank you to both for a lot of work that was done to get us there. We're in the finals, which I hadn't even planned on like I said, a lot of hard work, a lot of late hours, and a very tight timeline was instituted in getting this information compiled together. I'd like to thank every one of my supervisors in the towns that are there for their diligence, for giving us resolutions of support. Not as easy as one might think. But we did it. So waiting to hear back on how we've done there, and that just kind of plays in also to the outlook. Very optimistic at this point, and potentially with some good things coming down the line there. Our next meeting will be August 21st, 9 a.m., second floor, and I will entertain any questions and or concerns from the floor. Thank you.
Any questions, please?
Is this maybe the time to ask about that consolidation grant, since you brought it up? It's great. It's wonderful that we're in the finals. I'm not sure what that means, but it's good. It sounds good. When that first came up, it sounded to me like it was impossible to do, given the timeline and the
It's
stuff.
a different plan. This is the municipal consolidation plan. That timeline for that.
Oh, this is
great.
just the 4 towns?
That's what we put in the plan, and the highway
And
transit.
the highway one, and then the fund.
Exactly. So that was July 19th. We gave a presentation. There's been several rounds of that.
Yeah.
This is the second round we're in. The other plan that needs to be submitted that we talked about not having enough time was when we had to have a shared services panel within your county, consulting
Right.
all the village mayors. That's
All
not
the
the same thing.
stakeholders and the
There's-
body,
It's
yeah.
not the same
Right.
thing, but we did use that plan to kind of as a
Okay,
placeholder.
good. But we're on the right track then. Good.
Yes.
Good.
Okay, so no further questions for the chair. IGA, Representative Kennedy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The IGA committee met on, well, I don't remember the day, I'm sorry. It was a busy day. We did government efficiency first, and then we did IGA. But anyway, at our meeting that we did have, the Board of Elections came in to have some software approved, and we discussed payment options and did end up choosing an upfront payment, which will give us a resulting 15% discount on the software. We also approved some tech trainings for Board of Elections and a budget modification and transfer to pay for that. Interestingly, and tied in with the ag farmland, that presentation that we just heard, Don Smyers from Cornell Cooperative Extension came into IGA to give us an update. Although much of the focus of Cornell Cooperative is education, quite a bit of it, as you can see through that presentation, does involve economic development. So a meeting with IGA was very helpful, and he discussed sustainable agriculture. He discussed a lot of the different pieces that you can dig deeper into with that ag farmland report. And also just an overview of the emerging ag opportunities that are different from dairy, that are traditional mainstay for the county. Jack Henson came in from Veterans Affairs, and really one of the biggest things, well, he had several biggies coming through. He's retiring. So
Oh, no.
the Veterans Services Officer position is being revised with personnel, so Penny's going to go over that with him. We discussed the cost savings of replacing a full-time driver with 2 part-time, and how dispatch could be more closely managed and cut down on overtime because those vehicles are being driven every day. So there's a lot of overtime with one person doing it. So 2 part-time shifts might be the way to go with that. And also the DSS contract that we put in for Veterans Affairs with New York State Veterans Grant covers the entire cost of operating the department. So that was a very good news. Karen Sullivan came in and we discussed fare boxes for the buses. That was kind of got to be an extensive discussion as we were talking about it, but also kind of educational and technical at the same time. We also began our discussion of reviewing the Community Development Business Loan Program and any modifications that we want to make regarding those monies in the future. And coming up, one last thing we did was we did have a very late community grant application, and we decided to respect the deadline that we had set as March 1st, so we did have to deny the request, although worthy though it was. Upcoming in IGA, we're going to be looking over our strategic prioritization plan and tasking the things that are tasked to IGA. So that's what we'll be talking about at our next meeting, which is, I do know this, it's August 7th, 10:30 a.m. on the second floor.
Thank you. Any questions?
Any questions? Yes.
I know Representative Gelsman is not available today, but I just had some questions that maybe at the next IGA meeting, if we could get, I guess just one quick question related to Otsego Now. Their meeting notices, I've been emailing with Carol and had asked about meeting notices for, because they're subject to open meeting law as an IDA. And we haven't been receiving those meeting notices here at the county, and they haven't been distributed to us. And also their minutes, they only have minutes up to May. So June minutes, July minutes, they're required by law to publicly post those minutes. There's nothing posted for IDA, for Otsego Now on their website. And I'm just concerned, how Otsego Now suddenly has disappeared off the face of the map. From a staffing perspective and from just an updates perspective of what's going on. And I know the ED search is underway, but we're not hearing anything. Their information's not forthcoming, and they're not even obeying open meeting law. So I know you don't have the answers, but I just was hoping that at your next
Well,
IGA,
I do have the ability to find some
yeah,
answers.
that'd be great. Because I think there's a lot they're doing right now, but I think also where there seems to be, I think many of us want to see a strengthened partnership with Otsego Now, and it feels disconnected.
Well, we definitely are in an interim period, so I think everyone does share your hope that when that new CEO is in place, puts in a staff, I think we'll see some more cohesion in that entity. So that's what we're all hoping for, and we'll see what I can do.
Yeah, no, I absolutely understand, but yep.
With regards to Jack Henson, I just want to relate that his loss is substantial. You said that the job description was being redone by Penny. Could you just elaborate on that? What is it?
Just with
changing?
regards to certain strengths that they would be looking for in his replacement. They just wanted to make sure that the personnel worked with Jack to make sure that all of the things that we wanted in an ideal candidate would be there in the job description, so they would be more objective as we do the job search.
And then, did we receive the same amount of money? I think it was like $93,000 or $96,000 last year. Did we receive that?
Yes.
Good. So we will keep 2 in that office. Huh? Good.
Yes.
Good to hear.
Anything else?
I would just suggest maybe we clone Jack.
I can't help you there, David. That's beyond my.
So he doesn't retire.
Okay, thank you.
July 10th, worked on approving some contracts. We're working on moving contracts, all of which up until, I guess, this year or maybe last year were 1-year contracts. We're working on moving them to 3 and perhaps even 5-year contracts, so we don't have to go approving the same thing over and over again, a whole big pile of them every year. And speaking of not having to approve something over and over again, the department requested blanket approval to use county property for promotional information like Foster Care Month and Child Abuse Awareness Month and that kind of thing. We go through the whole approval process every year for every one of them, and we're hoping to get some blanket approval to put out those pinwheels and so forth and create awareness. Approve some non-mandated trainings, approve a bunch of positions. again, we're working, in fact, always working on trying to streamline the process and use the positions we have to the greatest good to be efficient. Working on establishing some temporary positions to take care of those gaps that we have all the time when somebody is hired, trained, spends 3 weeks working, and then quits. And now we have to hire someone and spend 6 months training them. Those kind of gaps are really, and I've talked about this before a lot. And so during the budget process, we'll be talking about those temporary positions to help handle that. We talked about purchasing, contracting issues and other purchasing issues. Housing, where we had what probably was one of the final conversations about the tiny home grant. Did that county? Did the tiny homes grant go in? Yes. All right. I love that. Good. And we'll see how that works. That's still in a kind of a malleable process and plan right now. Lots of concerns, and we're looking to address all of them. Talked about M&C salaries. That's in the minutes. Reconciled some fiscal issues, and that's it. Our next meeting is August 7th at 1 o'clock on the 3rd floor. And as always, you're all invited.
Any questions for the chair?
On the contracts that we're trying to get multi-year instead of single, on your office, do you have any sense of like the amount of time that's going to save your office by doing, instead of doing an annual contract and setting out to a 3-year?
I don't have a sense of that. I mean, as far as workflow in my office, December and January are really busy, especially DSS literally has boxes of contracts. We're trying to have been working with them to not have been all of them end of the same year. So there's some we're trying to stagger. And some of them have rates that are tied to the state, and so we've been able to come up with a way to reference that in the contract. We approve the contract for so many years at the rate to be set by the state, and that gives us an objective criteria for that. But yeah, I'll try to keep track of that though, but for DSS in particular, it is a big issue.
Further questions for the chair? Okay, DSLA, Representative Frazier.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We met on July 14th. Our cleanway from emergency service came in. We had a discussion on training opportunities in the county. We discussed the training center upgrades, priorities, and opportunities for funding. We talked about TOMA, grant writing for them. There's also Homeland Security money was just given to somewhere south of Albany, where they just got money for fire training. So we're going to be looking at Homeland Security. The committee is considering what existing training center to visit and review now. We're going to go look at some other training centers and see what they have, how they did it, how they funded it, what we may need. This last weekend, Hall of Fame weekend, went relatively smooth. I spent time in the operations center with both Art and in the 911 center with Rob. Very professional. Everyone was very well prepared. At our meeting, Bruce Maxson came in and he had some applicants for the assigned council program administrator. He brought some indigent assigned council affidavits into us to show these are the ones when somebody would like this public defender to represent them. They fill out income statements and stuff to share. It was interesting that he sends a lot back to some judges on occasion, because the judges, I understand, review this and tell you can. Well, one of them had on there that if you need to contact me, I'll be at my summer home in the Adirondacks. I'm pretty sure that one should not be.
I think we should all show up.
So, anyways, there are some things that we need. I don't know how you hold a judge's tail to the fire or something like that, but it's nice that Bruce is bringing those to us and showing us there's some problems. I had the privilege to attend a drug court graduation. That was a truly worthwhile program. The amount of money and stuff that it wants to save the county, and it changes the lives of those 6 graduates. You know, they're on a terrible, terrible path, and Susan, Addiction Services, the Public Defender's Office, the District Attorney, Judge Burns, everybody, I don't want to start naming because there's so many involved, but that is a great, great thing, and it's truly a great day for those 6 people. The CAFA, the new law passed the Senate, thanks to Senator Seward. Ellen has arranged a meeting.
August 10th at 4 o'clock at the meeting room at the Meadows.
Those will be local stakeholders here in Otsego County getting together to discuss how we're going forward.
Right.
911 Rob O'Brien, communication upgrades at the PSLA meeting. It was confirmed that we definitely needed 1 new tower in Garrettsville. Since then, it's been confirmed that all 3 that we discussed with PSLA are going to be needed. Outside estimate, $2.7 million. We believe there's a lot of grant money that we can get. We may be able to get under construction with 1 or more towers this year. I also attended the 911 Advisory Board meeting to discuss the MOU with the New York State Police. We discussed, debated the issues. They voted to support moving forward with the plan. The MOU now needs to move through the PSLA and admin and full board next month. Kathy Gardner came in and requested to fill a vacant funding position we approved. Denise Oliver from the Child Advocacy Center came in, discussed contracts. She then discussed, and I don't know if this is shared services or what, but Delaware County is in the process of setting up their own Child Advocacy Center. We are going to be helping them. Some of Delaware County's people will be in our center, learning, educating, but we're reaching out. She's done a nice job helping to coordinate that. Sheriff Devlin, in cooperation with our purchasing agent, Andrew Trombley, have reviewed the RFP for our engineering for the required jail upgrades. The analysis has been forwarded to PSLA and admin members in preparation for discussion at our next meetings. Hopefully everybody reviews. Our next PSLA meeting is Friday, August 18th at 9 a.m.
Any questions for the chair? Yes, Gary.
I don't remember if it was admin or budget, that endless day we had with all those committees. But we talked about a line for, budget line for SAS. And I think what we decided was we would send it back to PSLA for them to consider. If I'm right about that, is that going to be on your agenda for August?
If you remember, I left.
Yeah, I did, right.
Until I saw that in the admin minutes, I didn't know. Len mentioned something today. There's no reason it can't be. Okay. Len asked me this morning, to Stacy reach out to me, and I hadn't heard anything, so there's no reason it can't be discussed.
Right.
Every request is a request, so.
Okay. So I'm requesting it be in your agenda.
Okay.
Thanks.
Jen.
On that subject, I had a conversation. The first name is Steve.
Stacy.
Some of it was discussed at the not last month, but the previous month, PSLA. And some of the requests was that she provide some financial documentation. And I forwarded that information to her, and I think we discussed it too.
Yes, we did.
So if we need to prompt her to get that forward, I just talked to her in the hall.
I may have that, so maybe I'll make a note and send it to you if I do.
That facilitated a lot because there were some concerns. Not that we didn't want to support it, but we just wanted to do our due diligence.
That's why I asked for it. Yeah, exactly. I have to look. I think she sent me her budget, which I asked for, and other data.
You know, like salaries of their CEO and things like that.
That was the exact question that Len asked me this morning. Have you seen those things? I haven't seen them.
Okay, I'll go see what I have. I got a lot.
I just spoke to her in the call this morning. There's something else I had asked her for, and she said she would get that to me, and he said. Okay. So, yeah.
Just as on the topic of the SAS, they did come to admin and maybe it was budget, but it overlapped, so it was budget. And I did ask, we did have 5,000 on a budget line for them last year, and I did ask how much of that budget line was actually allocated to them, and the amount was under $500. And I do understand that there is discussion of what the support is for, but I did want to just put that out there within the discussion that the amount that was actually used for the use that we had put it in there for was under $500.
I have one question for Ed, but I just want to just comment quickly on SAS. Any nonprofit organization files a 990, and that public document is their record of revenues and expenses for the year. I know you're asking for a little more detail on salaries, but that 990 is a public document, and if anyone has never seen them before, I could forward some of those 990s for SAS. You can actually get access them through GuideStar, and they tell a lot of the operational story and for SAS, they will show you operating deficits for many years that they've been carrying. But I just had a follow-up question. I didn't see it in PSLA minutes, so it must have gone back to June, but I know Rob has been dealing with the tower leases and off and on, and that was a topic of discussion many times last year. And I know with Craig had mentioned they've been talking about the issue and challenge of the tower leases, managing those for many years. I just wondered if there was any more discussion about an RFP for a management company related to those tower leases.
Andrew, yeah, I can answer that. Actually, the answer to the question is yes. We have reached out to Andrew at Onondaga, and knowing that they have previously worked on management companies for tower leases, knowing that we are increasing the number of towers coming up. So the answer to the question is yes, we are looking at it, and I hope to be able to report back at the next Public Works meeting on a status update on it. Yep.
You'll find that on the Public Works, which is the county asset that they will be responsible for now.
Right, so it's going through Public Works. Yep, correct. Thanks.
Jim?
I'd just like to ask if I could get a copy of that 990 for SAS.
Yeah, I'll send them to the whole board. Yep.
Yep. Also on the SAS, I do think it would be worthwhile funding that to some degree, so I'm glad that that'll be discussed in PSLA. But I would also hope that in those discussions, there are discussions about having a part in their continuing governance. Just as we have dedicated funding for destination marketing, we have a permanent presence on their board. So I hope that question would also be involved in that discussion.
I was just wondering if you could go into maybe some further detail on that MOU that was discussed on July 20th. Ultimately, I request to get a copy of it.
Yeah, it's going to go to PSLA this month in Avery, so I don't think it's really finalized. But it's generally 90%.
But we each had a copy of it.
There were five New York State troopers there, 4 sheriff's departments. Pat Pigeon, Larry Lamb, Art Klingler, Rich Grimmer, Kathy, myself. Am I missing something?
I don't think so.
Things were hashed out. There's a lot of good to it. Everybody felt it was good. Questions the sheriff may have. Either Rob answered or the one state trooper there who seemed to be the IT guy for them.
Yeah.
Wherever.
His name escaped me.
Some of their talk above my head as far as that IT, they seemed to be on the same page. Voted, the only one that voted negative was the sheriff. But he felt he did put a qualifier in there that his primary concern is staff level at the 911 center. Not that it wasn't going to work, he was concerned about staff level. And he said as long as Rob can get this board to increase his staff if they feel it's needed, that the sheriff felt it was actually a good thing. So he's concerned about staff, so that's our problem. not really Rob's. Rob's understaffed and can't handle it, he should be coming here.
So Rob feels that he can handle it with current staff.
Yes, he can.
He did a lot of outreach to other counties. What was their experience when it happened and stuff, and he shared that with everybody.
No, I spent, and I don't know if this, I expected busier on Sunday. I'm not disappointed that it wasn't busy. I spent hours in the 911 center. There were 4 dispatchers there. At no time were more than 2 of them on the phone. At Hall of Fame Sunday induction, with 27,000 people here, there were 2 on the phone. I don't know if that's indicative of anything, but it's an observation that I expected more. I'm disappointed, but I just expected more of that. So, and to be truthful, in any emergency, a flood, anything like that, everybody with their phone, they're calling about the same thing. I believe any operation center could be inundated with 10 there or 5. So that's my opinion. So.
Also, people should keep in mind that the MOU is for a pilot program. We're not agreeing to do this. It's going to give us the opportunity to see what the effects are on our 911 center and adjust accordingly. And while we were there, these woman from the state police said that they are not doing away with their staff. So if there was a point in time where they were overwhelmed, you pick up the phone and they'll have it all transferred back to them for that period of time. So it seemed like it would really be covered well during this period of time and give us a chance to ascertain what our needs would be.
Yeah, that was important. I forgot about that. But they did say that at any one time, if something happened up there, we switched and they can turn it over and all go right back where it is today. For that time being. So
how long is that pilot program?
We can determine that. 6 months, 3 months. I mean,
so that wasn't listed in the MOU.
It's not yet. No, that's discussion. I mean, I would think it would get 6 months.
It's going to be a while before it can even be implemented.
Yeah.
The MOU was written, but it's a very draft document, correct?
Yeah, that was a draft. I think that somebody sent around, but it was.
It's kind of like the starting point in the draft. It's not by any stretch.
Yeah, that was a New York State Police draft of how they were going to deal with these directly with the 911 center. There is an MOU in place already on dealing with the emergency phone calls that wasn't made. Health and Ed, Representative Bliss.
We met on July 11th. First, the coroner's representatives were there. It's Gordon Carey from the coroner's office. We talked about the mobile morgue that's been ordered, hoping to have that arrive shortly. We talked about trying to develop a plan to more evenly distribute the coroner's calls. Don't know if that's possible or not, but coroners are talking amongst themselves trying to do that. And we discussed a lot of minute details about the coroner's office and how it functions. The coroners would come back to us at our next meeting, hopefully with what they feel is the best way to address that workload disparity. Don Smires from Cornell Cooperative Extension came in and talked about the farmland protection plan. They're obviously involved with that and interacting with Danny, and Danny gave a great presentation. I had a lot of informal contact with him over the past 6 months about the plan, and I think he did a great job on that. And Cornell Cooperative Extension obviously was involved in that, and a lot of the same things that he talked about, Dan Smyer was talking about as well. One of the things he touched on was the success of Bill Gibson's calf sale program. That's a model that I think we need to continue. And of course, Dan was looking to increase his budget in next year because partly to implement this plan and just the things that they need to do at Cornell. Office for the Aged, Kenny McDonald was there. Frances was away. She did a good job filling in. Talked about all extending contracts. We had a lot of contracts, not only with them, but all the different previous services, Department of Health. Same thing that you mentioned with social services, increasing those contracts to 3 years or longer than 1 year, so we don't have to. And decrease that workload not only for Alan but for the department heads as well, so that we don't have to keep reinventing the wheel every year. back to Office of Aging, I guess the biggest thing is Frances has officially handed in her letter of retirement effective August 31st. So we move forward with our replacement plan. Tammy's doing a great job getting up to speed quickly on that. Community services, Susan Matt. First thing you want to see there, revenue is up, but don't get too excited about that because those programs are reimbursements of services. So if revenues are up means our services are up also. So don't get overexcited there. But there's not a lot of anything exciting there because Susan and Francis and Heidi Bond, Department of Health, they do a great job. So we don't have a lot of controversy there. Makes my life easier. Department of Health, the Matt Johnson report for Heidi. We filled some vacant positions. We talked about increasing the length of contracts. And everybody talked about budget. It's budget time. We talked a little bit about budget and what they're going to be doing for next year's budget. And our next meeting on Tuesday, August 8th, 9:15 at the Meadows. Questions? Yes.
The person that you want to hire for this farmland for the preservation plan, would that, whose budget would that fall under?
Good question. Don't know. And that's
Jill,
what Gary was talking about.
had three options that I asked him to send them to everybody. And Schoharie gave it to somebody that was on their staff. I believe some others have contracted out. I think it's an opportunity for us to look at shared services as well.
Right. I'm just looking at that would be seeing three organizations come to the budget committee, all of them with money in there for this person without knowing.
Well, that was Gary's point, I think, earlier, that we got three different agencies reporting to three different committees.
I think it should be in the budget of the Agriculture Committee.
Right.
Oh, that's right, we don't have it.
Well, that used to be called Health Ed and Agriculture. Somehow the agriculture got dropped off. That's why cooperative extension is an artful. But soil and water is in a different spot.
Well, that's what I mean.
We need to
Soil
reorganize.
and water comes into his budget. 5% that goes in with their budget. Where's this person at? Which one?
Good question.
Good question. And that's something that maybe Danny and his work can answer. That's what Gary's comment earlier. We need to reorganize maybe and get everybody in the same boat. And as Kathy commented, shared services, maybe get in with another county that has this position and share that person rather than create a whole new position. It may not necessarily need to be a full-time position in one county.
Jim?
Okay, so at the farmland preservation meetings, I encourage them to work with Cornell Cooperative Extension and to work with Schoharie County, because you're not going to help these big dairy farms. To be honest, they have all the technology they need. But where you can help is like these smaller farms that want to do vegetables, or they want to do the pigs, or they want to do that. But I think if you were to work with Schoharie County, they have access to the Commissioner of Agriculture. He's from Schoharie County, and I think you'd be better off to go that route rather than try and reinvent the wheel. That was my suggestion.
Good point.
And also the biggest thing with that farmland protection plan is to get buy-in from the actual farmers. So farmers have a tendency to be independent. Stubborn and don't always want to get involved in those types of programs. Caution. Yes, absolutely.
So, and agriculture actually is listed under soil and water committee. So no escaping here. Representative Frazier.
Yeah, like I stated earlier, I had to leave that to go to 911. So if anybody's sitting on the committee wants to add something, feel free. We met on July 20th. We had our first person was Andy Trombley, our purchasing agent. We talked about 1,067 requisitions, 988 purchase orders. There was 14 RFPs. The RFP for fleet leasing had received 2 responses. The redraft of the employee and the salary study went out. Cheryl McGovern came in, and we had to do some budget mods to cover various claims. This is something that since I've been on the board we haven't done before, but there was a number of claims that were settled. So our municipal insurance expense was up. Bill Mason was in. We talked about highways and the roads, and talked about declaring Stella had been declared, and we're doing post-analysis on that. We had a short meeting with Art Klingler and Rich Brimmer and Pat Pigeon and Robert Bryan, and some of them after the 911 that day. We will further that. Now, Ellen Kakoma came in and talked about the CAFA meeting. She also discussed opioid litigation, noting there were 2 law firms. We have some information on that. Did you want to talk about that at all?
Yes, certainly I could. There are 7 or 8 counties statewide that have signed up with, there's one main firm and there's a second one that's also doing that. We did discuss at admin, and there was a good article that Gary actually had forwarded about how it's not exactly the same as the smoking litigation, although that's what it's being compared to. And the biggest difference is that that people who were smoking were using the product as it was intended. People who are overusing opioids, of course, are not using the drugs as intended. So the legal status of what's going to happen here is somewhat up in the air. But it certainly, I think, is worthwhile for the county to look at it. I've reached out to other counties in the state, and there are 7 or 8. And I will send out to you the information. I think I sent it to admin, but I'll send it to everyone. And so if you would like to talk about that, I could contact one or both of the firms, have someone come in, and they could go over all of it with you.
Ellen presented a draft of nepotism policy. Penny Gentile and Matt and Ellen worked on that for us. She also presented her workers' comp budget. That seems to be fluid, and that was approved. We approved the Meadows roofing project. There was a couple of hiccups in that purchasing policy there, and the bids that came in, 2 of them were not compliant. I suppose you would have anticipated when you have changes in a process that there are hiccups going through. This one, the low bidder, basically, one sheet of paper was supposed to be in a separate sealed envelope, was not in that sealed envelope. That made the bid non-compliant. Hopefully we can educate our vendors to make sure in the future that everything that they do, is filed in a compliance manner. This is costing us some money, but hopefully it's a lesson learned. We don't go through that again. So, but that was approved. We had to move some money around to do it. Dan Kroll updated us on the auction. That's going to be August 16th. We also needed to approve abstractors. These are the same 2 that we have used for a couple of years now, I believe, and the money stayed the same at $80 per abstract. They've done great jobs for us. He discussed the sales tax report and general fund balance. I think that was about it. Our next meeting is August 22nd at 9:45. Anybody want to add anything? Okay.
Any questions for the chair, Dan?
The salary study, do we have a date for return on that? Approximate?
There has to be. It's out there. I couldn't tell you which it is, but it's out there. Yes. When it goes out, there's a date for.
All right. Well, I know that. So that's fine. The other, without sounding like a broken record, any movement on the leasing?
2 responses.
Yeah.
There were
It says in here
responses
that
back.
there was 2.
There were 2 responses. I don't know if it's been approved? I don't know. I mean, he's supposed to be doing it side by side for us to approve, I guess, so I can find it out.
And
I just wondered on the mandated shared services initiatives, the plan that Karen emailed around that was submitted in New York State. Would this be a place to ask about that specifically?
Basically answer that. As I told them, we weren't going to do a plan in 2017, that we couldn't meet all those requirements of getting all these stakeholders together in that time frame. But when we were up at the MCEP, I talked to people from the Department of State on that, and they asked that one of the things, if we were to submit a regular plan, if we had all these options, there would have to be a sheet that broke down the savings for all of these plans, and I would have to attest those savings were actual. They asked that I send whatever we had and we're going to be working on to them by and distribute it to you folks by August 1st, or August 2nd actually. No, first is the deadline. So I said, no problem, I'll send you what we're working on. The MCEP was just a natural to hand in there because obviously that had savings and stuff broken down into it. And then you should receive an addendum of additional projects that we're working on, some of which came up. We did have one meeting with surrounding municipalities. I think only 5 people showed up to that. So that's there in case they were in flux over, I guess they weren't getting a lot of plans in. So they were talking about, and there was 2 factions, maybe if you just had this in by August 1st, you'd still be in consideration for the money in 2018 or 2019. And they were going, that very same day, I came back to Oneonta, attended a meeting in Oneonta where somebody from the governor's office was there telling a different story than the people at the Department of State had just told at that point in time. So they are working on it. I wanted to make sure that we had a placeholder in there. So that's what I sent.
I just wondered, are they requiring, because I know it obviously sounds like it's in flux, but in the very beginning requirements, it sounded like they were going to make the board vote by resolution. Is there any value to us as a body trying to do that at a future meeting before year end, like September meeting?
Yeah, I think you said you may vote, or it was no hard requirement by September 15th, so we could do it at a September 15th meeting. And you're just voting on basically concepts in these 2 other plans. And but it was not required or expected that that would be done in August because it was to give people a month to read what's going on.
If we could do that, I would vote. I would advocate for, if the rest of folks thought there was value, I would be all for trying to go on record with a resolution, if possible.
I have a call into Mark Patterson from Department of State to say, where do you expect us to go from here?
Great.
I had a question for Dave on H&E and I got distracted, I'm sorry. Happens a lot.
I'm going backwards.
We're going backwards. I'm sorry, I really am. Sue Matt's here to answer any questions we may have about that creation of the position in her department. And I wondered if we might take, that's a resolution we have today, and I wondered if we might just take questions about that now so she could go back to work.
Why don't you just give a little explanation, and if anybody has a question, they want to ask a question on it.
I'm asking to create a managed care specialist position. It's funded through several streams of money. 2/3 of it are state aid, and another third is pay for performance money that we've earned. And that's a big, it's a component of this job. So it's a position that will address our participation in the insurance and healthcare changes that are going on, and really pull together some of the things that we need to address more aggressively. I mean, our revenues are good. I was looking at reports this week that made my hair go gray because our revenues could be better, and it's those types of things. So there's things that we could be doing better, that we should be doing better, and we should get paid for all the hard work that our staff does. Any questions?
Just wanted to say that, like I said, a lot of that is reimbursement money. So this person would keep better track of those, so we do get all the reimbursements that we're entitled to.
And it includes, we even built room in this budget for expansion, so we've covered all the benefits and all of the other costs that go along with it. And I think we budgeted 68, and we're expecting costs right now to be in the low 60s. So we've got room, and we've always historically covered cost of any state position. That's been the agreement we've made with the board.
Not that I'm really concerned about her going for any since I'm involved. I just wanted to bring to note also publicly that this is the first position created in the state. In fact, the state contacted Susan about the creation of this. So she's a forward thinker and a leader in her profession. I want to say thank you publicly for getting out there ahead of everybody else, because the state actually called her about it. So
They're still trying to, haven't given me the final yes. They're trying to figure it out. But I'm pretty optimistic.
Keith, sorry I skipped over you there. Solid waste environmental
I
concerns.
wondered where I
You thought you were getting off easy, didn't you?
I thought you were going to do that. Thank you, Madam Chair. We met on July 17th. We removed the environmental assessment form for the Ag Farmland Protection Plan and declared it as a negative environmental impact as through seeker. Danny was in and gave a report. We also, Jordan Clemens went in and went over, did a PowerPoint presentation on what he's been doing and going to do. And Jordan also announced that the farm tour this year will take place on October 12th from 8 to 1. He's going to provide lunch at Bosie's. Today you're going to see a resolution 253 for water quality improvement program that they applied for a salt shed for the town of Butternuts. It's in the amount of $318,560, which goes to the county instead of soil and water. I'm sure we'll all approve that. And Karen gave an update on recycling and solid waste garbage reports. And some of the weights and things are on the minutes. I personally want to thank Karen and Art Klinger for the ex-King trucking concerns regarding speed and safety. Art in emergency services reached out to ex-King, and they will be putting on a safety demonstration, 2 of them, on August 8th at the Meadows. I think I'm signed up for that. Get an update on the solar project. I believe there was 3 rows out of 40 working. Is there more working now?
They have completed the 40 rows.
Oh, they're all done? All done. Yeah. It's all working?
That's my understanding.
For now?
For now.
Made some budget transfers, and we meet again on August 14th at 9:30.
Anybody have any questions? Jim?
I have no questions, but I would like to thank Michelle Farwell for her work on the salt shed. I think we should all know she did work on that.
Directed for what the area that those trucks are traveling through, for those fire departments. But the idea is to send 1 or 2 people, and then they can reach out to the rest of their departments.
What's the date on that?
August 8th.
At what time?
$1,300, and that's 1 o'clock, right?
Yes.
And I think the other one's at 14. No,
6:30. I don't know what.
6:30, whatever. $1,800. Let's put it that way.
Okay. All right. Thanks. Any further questions, Mr. Chair? Peter, I had one that wanted to ask you, Public Works, about the asbestos.
It's going to be put on hold because we're awaiting final approval from Onondaga on the bids.
Okay.
That was what was communicated to me.
So we didn't have a side-by-side on that?
Apparently not. Doug?
You're talking the asbestos for the abatement?
We only got 1 bid back. The buyer unfortunately was on vacation. I was trying to get hold of him yesterday, get an answer on how we can go from here. He thinks it could be put out that way if nobody else bids on it.
But until I get more information back, we're ready to go. It's under 20,000, so it doesn't have to go out to a formal bid.
Okay.
But if we couldn't get the three,
Right.
original.
Dan?
That asbestos issue is gonna stop the whole project until that's done first.
That's correct. If the project was to move forward, it would be in around Columbus Day.
Okay, so we have time. Okay.
Keith, did that answer your question?
No, what are we talking about? The room next door or the roof?
The roof.
The roof.
Talking the roof?
The roof,
Talking
Meadows.
room. See, you got.
Oh, wait a minute, we could have a project.
Yes, good question, Keith.
So that, when you answered the question for when that project would start, were you talking the room or the roof?
I'm assuming you're talking about Ellen's office here right next door? No.
No, we're talking about the roof.
The Meadows roof, does that have to be abated? No, there'll be an abatement as part of the project. Yes. There is asbestos in the flashing, which the roofers removed. So
Okay,
well, there's confusion here because we're talking about two different things.
Project.
Why don't you come up here where people can.
Not the room.
Tell them what you got from Mr. Jordan so we can get this figured out.
You probably, I was talking in on an email, Jim wanted to know if there was going to be a resolution today on the asbestos.
That's for the roof. No, that's for the monitoring. You misunderstood his email. There's a monitor, we got to pay for a monitoring company. Correct. To actually monitor the abatement while it's happening there. And that is around $3,000 or $4,000. We got the quotes, 3 different monitoring companies, and they've got the lowest quote, Mid-Atlantic Environmental, I believe it was. That doesn't have to go out to resolution for that because of the price.
Because of the price, sorry.
Sorry for misunderstanding.
Well,
that's what I said. I'm on.
For those of you that don't know, under Code Rule 56, asbestos, the monitor has to be separate from the contractor. Cannot be the same, by law, cannot be the same contractor.
You can't police yourself.
Correct.
So that's for all our projects.
That is correct. Anytime you do an asbestos abatement or monitoring or removal or anything like that,
There'll be a separate contract.
it has to be a completely separate entity, non-connected.
Thank you.
All right, any further questions? Moving on, negotiations, Representative Frazier.
We have a meeting set up.
Performance review and goal setting, Representative Powers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We met July 7th. We will meet again August 8th at 11:30. The biggest, of course, drill in the room here is the salary study, and I know the question's already been asked, so I won't ask it again, but I do think the board should recognize that we have lost and continue to lose department heads, and for good reason. And I think we really need to address that. Any questions, I'll try to answer them.
Government efficiency, Representative Oberack. Representative Gelson's not here.
Wow, okay.
Were you there that day, Keith?
Yes.
You were.
Yeah.
MSEP, weights and measures.
Right, okay. So under government efficiency, the big order of the day was the, more or less the consolidation of services between Shenango and Otsego counties when it comes to weights and measures. We are looking at Jody Taylor taking over those responsibilities. There are some savings that would be coming back to both counties in that area, and it looks like it is moving forward, and with very little question at this time. We're still kind of waiting for, I think, response back from Shenango as far as the overall numbers when we present them. So that kind of gives you, again, a very quick and tap danced version of the update from that. Thank you. Any questions?
And Karen has
I did want to just add that Karen Sullivan did submit in the CFA's funding that with this taking on of the Shenango County duties, we would also be adding a part-time staff member and a vehicle, replacing a vehicle. So that was what the funding for the CFA would Is that correct, Karen?
Right, and
Yeah.
some equipment as well.
Yeah.
And just for a matter of fact, Shenango County is still in discussion with us. I sent them the application as we submitted it, showing some cost savings. And I said nothing's in concrete at this point. And if we get the LGE, it's a local government efficiency grant that we put in. If we get it and they don't come through with an agreement, then we just, decline it based on that. But it was a good opportunity to cover some of our startup cost if we do combine forces. So moving ahead.
Next time I'll just defer to Karen.
Hesitate to ask any questions. Okay. Before we do the agenda, take a quick break.
Oh, could I add one thing?
No.
Oh, please. I just wanted to speak to Andrew's question that he asked me earlier about the publishing of the times and the minutes for Otsego Now. I did send Craig a text message and asked if he could comment on that. He said they did not meet last month and that they've been focusing their energies on doing interviews. And I do want to just say they're having great interviews and looking to make a decision in early August. So that's an update directly from Craig. Thank you.
That'd be great to make that motion now.
As many of you know, I've been working on the ethics committee, identifying candidates and things like that. Jack Henson's been working a lot with me on that. So I would propose an executive session to discuss some of those candidates. Under Article 7, Rule 47F, medical, financial credit, or employment history of a particular persons, corporations, or matters leading to appointment, employment, promotion, discipline, suspension, dismissal, or removal of a particular person or corporation.
So moved.
Second. Motion is second, all in favor?
Aye.
Gary, Glenn.
About 10 minutes later.
Okay, and so take a break and then we'll
Take a break and
meet in the.
So moved.
Okay, motion is second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Is there any representative wishing to remove a resolution from the consent agenda?
And you already moved, are we moved?
Unbelievable. Okay. So, call for action on the consent agenda. Have a
So
motion?
moved.
Okay, second by Steve.
Frazier?
Aye.
Powers?
Aye.
Clark?
Aye.
Stammel?
Aye.
Kennedy?
Aye.
Overacker?
Aye.
Bliss? Marietta?
Yes.
McCarty?
Yes.
Wilbur?
Aye.
Koenig?
Aye.
Nelson? Carson?
Yes.
Stillebrook?
Yes. 5,872 ayes, 0 noes, 356 absent. The consent agenda is adopted.
Can I just make a request in the minutes that we've talked about, that Public Works Committee look into the options available to us for members of this board to participate in committee meetings from a remote site in a way that's both legal and technologically feasible. Yeah, I think that's it.
I have a question.
Yes.
Why would Public Works be doing that? Wouldn't you think IT would be doing it?
Well, maybe that's what they call it. We're talking about having
Grounds.
cameras and video screens and whatever.
Legal should. I think legal should be the one.
They probably should come
Sounds
to
like a
admin.
multi-task.
Okay, good.
Because
Change that.
both IT and.
That's good. Okay.
So you bring it up at.
I will. Good.
Okay, so we are
I
prepared to.
have unfinished business. I'd like to talk this one.
Okay.
Could I have the floor? I was gonna do this during admin, but.
Thank you, Dave.
There's a lot of numbers.
crapshoot. These are numbers.
Yes, they are.
Last month, admin withdrew a motion for HR 1871. In front of you, you have a bunch of numbers. 3144, that's the number of counties in the United States. $9 billion of Medicaid paid by those counties. $9 billion. 62 counties in New York State. 7.3 billion out of the 9 billion paid is paid by 62 counties in New York State. 7.3 out of 9 billion is New York State. 57 is upstate counties in New York State. 2.3 billion is paid by those 57 upstate counties. 3,082. So if you take 3144, the total counties, and take out 62 New York State counties, those are the counties outside New York State. 3,082. 1.7, that's 9 billion, less the 7.3 paid by New York State. So 1.7 out of the 9 billion is what 49 other states pay. 3,082 counties pay 1.7, while upstate 57 counties pay 2.3. Upstate pays more than all 49 states combined. Think about that. We pay more in Medicaid in upstate New York than the entire rest of the country. 22 states in the union pay zero. That's the next one. Zero local dollars for Medicaid. Almost half of the country, there's no local cost for Medicaid. The states pick up the entire cost. 11.4. That's our total tax levy in Otsego County. 10.2 million is paid for Medicaid in Otsego County in 2016. 90% of our county tax levy, 9 out of $10 is raised by property taxes, goes to the state for our Medicaid. 9 out of 10. 10 million. $10 million goes to the state. Let's put that in perspective. That is a DRI award for Otsego County every single year. The DRI in Oneonta is pretty big. 10 million, that would be big for the entire county.
Skip zero.
Pardon me?
Skip zero.
Zero, that's the amount local share of what those 22 states pay. No local cost,
Okay,
22 states. Sorry. Under Medicaid.gov, a federal government managed website, it is written, quote, the states must ensure that they can fund their share of Medicaid expenditures for the care and services available under their state plan. That's a state responsibility. It doesn't mention the counties at all. On the same website, under financing and reimbursement, it states the Medicaid program is jointly funded by the federal government and the states. There is absolutely no mention of a local share. There's a book on Citizens Budget Commission. It's called The Poor Way to Pay for Medicaid, Why New York Should Eliminate Local Funding for Medicaid. They're founded in 1932. The Citizens Budget Commission is a not-for-profit, nonpartisan civic organization devoted to influencing a constructive change in the finances and services of New York State and New York City governments. A major activity of the Commission is conducting research on the financial and management practices of the state and the city. They state the inequities of current policy. A major flaw in New York's current policy requiring localities to pay for a large share of Medicaid costs is that it distributes the financing burden inequitably. Medicaid provides health coverage primarily to low-income and indigent New Yorkers. resulting in generally higher Medicaid enrollment, utilization, and spending in low-income areas. So if you have a pretty affluent tax base, you probably aren't paying much Medicaid in your county. It's unfair. If you have a poor county, you're paying more, a higher percent. So if it was spread out over the state, it'd be more equitable.
So you're telling me Suffolk pays less per capita in Medicaid than Otsego?
That's probably true.
I don't know
I
if
can get
that's
that
per
number.
capita
I
or
get
percent.
I get that number. I get
Just
that
throwing that
number.
out there.
So,
For Westchester.
yeah, it could be. The variation affects individual taxpayers. Because each county's Medicaid payment reflects the level of spending within its borders. Low-income counties pay more relative to their population and income towards Medicaid than do more affluent counties. This variation affects individual taxpayers. An individual with a certain income or home value living in a low-wealth county generally pays more towards Medicaid through local taxes than an individual with an equivalent income or home value living in a more affluent. This is not how state services are typically paid for, and for good reason. We do not pay taxes based on how many people in state prisons come from our county, or how many students in the state universities come from our county. It is a mistake to tax people differently depending on the extent to which low-income people living in their county make use of Medicaid.
For any service for that.
The financial burden this requirement places on counties is highly unusual. Many states do not require any local contribution. Among those that do, none come close to what is required in New York. The policy is problematic for two reasons. It places an inequitable burden on the taxpayers, and it reduces the pressure to contain costs. It's a state program. They should be maintaining costs. Eliminating the local share would significantly improve the New York State finances, its Medicaid program. The policy has long placed an inequitable burden on residents living in lower income counties. The state should assume responsibility for the local share liability over a period of 4 or 5 years. This phase-in period is in line with the state takeover of administrative responsibility for the program and with full implementation of the federal health care reform. A gradual assumption of the local costs would provide a strong incentive for county governments to adhere closely to the property tax cap and should lead to significant local tax relief. This was printed in 2011. Okay? The tax cap was just coming in, so we are absolutely being treated unfairly here in New York. New York State has pushed their costs down to the counties since the inception of Medicaid in 1965. Our predecessors here on this board, our state representatives, city and county representatives across the state, past and present, have been asking for relief from this, possibly the largest unfunded mandate in the country for decades. There is no leverage to pressure the state to change the formula for paying for Medicaid. How do we force the state to change it? We don't have any leverage, right? How do we everybody, this board, state assemblymen, everybody, been trying, can't get it done. There's no leverage to pressure the state to change the formula for paying for Medicaid. Until now, several of our U.S. congressmen and women banded together to bring an amendment to change the way that New York funds Medicaid. These congressmen and women previously fought for these changes in New York as county executives, Erie County, city mayors, Corning, New York State senators, New York State Assembly men and women, and private business people, but to no avail. They are applying the leverage that they feel is needed. The amendment is H.R. 1871, the so-called Faso-Collins Amendment. This amendment simply states that the federal government will decrease the state's DSH, hospital funding, allotment by the amount that political subdivisions, counties, are required to contribute. New York State could prevent those cuts by complying. Thus, no cuts to our hospitals. If passed, New York State would have 2.5 years to implement the program. Another number for you, 1.5. 1.5% of the total state budget is what 2.3 billion is. So for them to cover the 2.3 billion, it's 1.5% of our state budget. Let's think about the Buffalo billions, the Tappan Zee billions. Just last week, the Oneida Star had something on the front page about tax incentives for Hollywood movie producers. $445 million a year we give to Hollywood for them to film here. The money's there. I think it can be found. I'm not naive enough to believe that the state would not attempt to collect the money in another way. Oh well, I believe that it's my job to do everything in my power to remove this huge unfunded mandate from the backs of our fellow Otsego County residents. Supporting HR 71 is the best opportunity to do that. An opportunity like this may not come along again while we're all sitting here. I've been criticized for being partisan to HR 1871, if attempting to save our taxpayers $10 million and forcing the state to take full responsibility for Medicaid is truly partisan, then I will wear that badge with honor. Thank you.
Anybody else? Here you go.
So,
Yeah.
you're going to respond to this, or what? Do we get to? Should we get to respond to that? Yeah. Well, I'm in favor of what you're saying. And I really was disappointed that got pulled. I just had a hard time believing that got pulled because 20 people showed up in the back of the room. That being said,
because of the 20 people. It was
well, I'm pretty sure it was, but go ahead. Anyway, I appreciate what you're doing, and I think we should support Representative Faso. I think we really sort of didn't do our work when we just pulled that. And then
just one comment. So I think there are a lot of people in the state that have the same concern, and there's a coalition of at least a few county attorneys and a couple of people in the state legislature that are seeking now to pass a bill that would do just that, would force the state to take over those costs that Ed described. I will send that out to all of you if you want.
Yes, Empire State, that's a farce. That Empire State Equity Act. And any of those that say that they'll give us our money if we reduce the tax base by the same, that's a farce. So can we take 10 million off our property tax roll? Absolutely not. You know, it's the state's responsibility to take care of Medicaid. They should take care of it. But then putting our hands behind our back and saying, sure, you go ahead, if you give a tax relief, we'll give you the money back. That's a net zero for the county. The state's still not going to take the responsibility.
So I'll check that bill then, Ed, because I am aware of the one you're talking about, that one, but I thought there was a second one. So I will see if I can find that second one.
On that Empire State Equity Act, you go on the governor's webpage where he endorses it, and he is so far off with his numbers. There's a column he says in there that it gives it the county, it gives the Medicaid cap number, which is correct, it was 10.8, and then it has one, the percent of Medicaid based on tax assessment and tax levy. He has 10%, this is for Otsego County. It's 10% of our budget, it's not 10% of our county tax rate. It's 100% wrong. That's on his webpage. So.
Somebody else had their hand raised. Oh, Andrew, it was back there.
I mean, I don't disagree with the issue at hand, and I know Andrew Samuel has said the same comments. You know, this is an important issue, and it's a burden that we have to deal with. But that resolution that was presented at the last board meeting, I mean, you know, as I pointed out in the administrative committee minutes, it clearly, the discussion was tied to the American Health Care Act and the FASO amendment, which that committee was making that connection in that discussion. When we come into our board meeting and vote on a resolution and we try to separate those issues when at the very committee meeting those issues were intertwined, that to me was where we fell short, and we should have never brought that resolution forward. If we want to take action on this issue, then let's take action on it in a concrete, through a mechanism and a method that makes sense, and that we've done due diligence on, and is not tied to the American Health Care Act and an agenda we have no control over, or that's been handed to us and basically asked our county board to basically go along with something that we had no input on from the very beginning. I mean, I don't disagree, Ed, with anything you've said. What I disagree with was that specific resolution and where it came from and the baggage it has attached to it.
Hey, Andrew. Wait, Andrew's down.
Yeah. And I appreciate your thoughtful presentation, and I agree with what you're trying to do, and I think probably all of us here disagree with the unfunded mandates from the state. And I think it is unfair, inequitable, however you want to characterize it, how New York State has structured this funding. And I think we need, as a board, if this is something we're passionate about, we should look at a resolution that really addresses the specific issue instead of bringing in that ancillary issue of the American Health Care Act, which is what we were looking at last month when we voted. You know, the FASO amendment wouldn't just give us the FASO penalty if that were enacted. It would also give us all the loss of funding that would be associated with the American Health Care Act, which would be extremely damaging to our local economy. You mentioned the Empire State Act as well. That's another congressional bill that's been proposed. So those two are congressional, but I do think that Ellen shared with us one that came out of the Assembly, and I think that's really where this restructuring of the funding needs to take place. It needs to come through the New York State Legislature and not be attached to reductions in federal funding. You know, I think our state legislators really need to get in gear, and if we can be part of pressuring them to do so, I think that would be a good thing.
Yeah, go ahead, Dan. No,
We have no control over whether the American Health Care would pass or not, correct?
Right.
Okay, so.
Well, we do.
Whoa, he's got the floor, sir.
Call a representative.
Well, yes, beyond that, but I mean, it's gonna go like anything, it's gonna go to a vote. So whether it passes or not is really kind of out of our control. So my view, and I could be wrong, what Ed's resolution went along with, if rescinding that bill or that law, that's the only way the FASO part of it would kick in. So whether we support a FASO or not, whether the ACA survives or not is completely separate. The only time his resolution would kick in is if that ACA bill was pulled.
AHCA.
Yeah.
ACA is already.
God, it's been called so many different names, it's starting to.
ACA is the one that passed.
So my point is, the resolution isn't going to have any effect unless they pull the American Health Act, correct?
The FASO amendment is part of the AHCA.
That's correct, but it's only specific to New York State.
Yeah, that's my understanding, yeah.
Okay, so if like it did, the vote went down, it didn't pass.
In the Senate, correct.
In the Senate. Yeah. The FASO bill has no effect.
It's still a bill that's out there that could be brought up again by the Senate.
That's correct.
And potentially pass in reconciliation.
Let's say that it was successful. We're still going to have the same effects of that passage, whatever they are. But we still have nothing to force New York State to take this burden off our back. We've been trying for decades under Republican administrations, under Democratic administrations to get this burden off our back. It's still here. So that's what he's saying, is that's the only way to force their hand to take it off our back.
What I wanted to say was.
You find that funny?
Was the HR 1871 is a vehicle that does exist for us to make public our opinion with regards to the unfunded mandate. It's a way for us to express our support of taking away that mandate. That does exist. the HR 1871. There are other ways which I would be more than happy to explore that Andrew had mentioned through the assembly, which might also work. But to Dan's point, whether or not the AHCA goes through, this is us having a voice on this opinion of the $10 million that's affecting our county. And with that very small window, that's where we can have our say.
Can I have a second time? Just
Is anybody else who hasn't had a first time?
Make sure everybody
yet?
gets first, up first, yeah.
I understand what Ed's saying, and I felt that very strongly for a long time. But when I read that bill, I didn't see anything that was going to force New York State, because I was afraid it was going to end up with feds not reimbursing us, and the whole state would simply end up with less money reimbursed from the federal. And that's why I was opposed to it, because I didn't see that that would continue. But perhaps I misread it, but that was my objection.
The wordage, and I have it, is that whatever the states make the counties pay, the feds were going to reduce that DHS, the local hospital funding, by that same amount. So if the state only paid $2 million, they were going to withhold $300,000, whatever. But that was directly proportional to whatever the local share was. They were going to reduce the federal reimbursement to the local hospital.
Well, it sounded to me like the total amount coming to New York State could significantly decrease, and that was not going to help anybody.
It could. I think it could, assuming you're assuming that Governor Cuomo and the state is going to, rather than have that money disappear from the federal government.
That's a big assumption.
But that's a big assumption, because we all know Mayor Cuomo, he's just going to not do it.
No, it's not Mario, it's Andrew right now. That adds another Andrew to our community.
I'm sorry, we all know Andrew's, that's what he's going to do. He's going to just not pay it and blame it on the feds, and that's my objection. I understand this whole thing goes back to the original bill. As you stated, it's supposed to be the federal government and the states. The counties are not supposed to be involved. But there was some kind of a loophole in there that New York is one of the few states that actually took advantage of. The rest of the states followed the intent of the law. New York State took advantage of a loophole. So the better avenue is to get Congress to close that loophole so that they can't do it.
Yes.
So it sounds like we have a consensus of board members that want to do
Everybody
something
wants that to happen.
and pick up path. So let's get it on our agenda. We could talk about it at a committee level and then bring it into admin since they're going to have the final approval. Because I think Ed has taken a lot of time and given us a lot of factual information. And so let's not let this drop by because of partisanship. Let's move forward on something we can actually have an effect on. Maybe it's reaching out to Shenango County and other surrounding counties to us and saying, hey, look, let's form our own coalition and saying enough's enough. We're poor up here and you're making this a mandate. I mean, for me, when I'm out there talking to the general public the last couple of years and trying to explain to people that 90 cents of every dollar that's been collected on property tax goes for this one mandate, they have no idea that that's happening. So let's take this as an opportunity to band together as 14 instead of dividing amongst issues that we have absolutely no control on. This one we do. If we invite our neighboring counties in, I think we have a win. That puts more pressure on the assemblymen and our senators.
Anybody else who hasn't spoken wants to speak? Jim?
I just think if you look at the way Andrew Cuomo went after the people that brought this up, Faso and Collins and all those others, I think you have to realize the only way this happens is if it comes from the federal government. I don't think this will ever go through the state government.
Well, hasn't all the years we've been here. Andrew,
I just wanted to just go back. I mean, we sent a letter to the governor regarding supporting pipelines. We made it, a resolution was passed by this board, a resolution on putting that letter forward. I mean, that going to Len's point, I mean, even the resolution that was presented in July, it had no binding impact or effect. It would have been just going on record. So I mean, all we're talking about here, to Len's point, is let's all just put something together we can all get behind. My point being that previous thing, and I think that many people in Otsego County, at least the people who came to the meeting, would agree that particular resolution has some issues with it because of where it came from in the process that resulted in it. I would just advocate, just like the letter that the majority of this board voted for and was sent to Governor Cuomo about gas pipeline support, would be we follow a similar course of action.
I just wanted, I agree with what Len said, and I agree with what Andrew just said. But mostly, thank you for that presentation, because I think that was very good and really laid out the facts, starkly.
Thank you, Ed.
And I think the bill itself, when introduced in the House, was it was an amendment of the Social Security Act and Medicaid, not the healthcare act that placed there as in their process. But so I don't think that we should have a problem supporting the bill as it is when it's not attached to the healthcare. Because all of us who've sat in this room here for any length of time know that the state has done nothing with mandates, and every year they cut things, they promise us mandate relief, and every year they don't do it. And I don't see that changing.
Pardon me. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
The tax cap was the first, we were told, we're gonna put the tax cap in place, then we're gonna give you mandates.
We're still waiting.
Crickets.
Where are the mandates? They didn't give you a mandate, they did just the opposite, they put more mandates on you. That was a way, the tax cap was a way for the state government to relieve their tax burden and impose it on the towns and school districts, the counties.
All right, anybody else? Anything else? See you on 6th.
Imagine what $10 million would do to our roads.
I'm just going to hand out everyone the rules on executive session.
I'm surprised that came back up.